Chapter 2247. Third Mastermind was right. The four forces were hostile to each other. If they had the chance, they would try their best to kill each other's powerful warriors. The hatred could not be resolved. So what if they were irreconcilable enemies, like Third Mastermind said? Weren't the four forces always at odds with each other and trying to destroy each other? There was no power without ambition. Everyone wanted to unify Devil's Sea. Everyone wanted to become the king of this sea region. The four forces had existed for so many years that they had always wanted to destroy the other three forces and unify the Devil's Sea. Luli was a great opportunity, a chance for the three forces to work together temporarily. The Hell Palace had too many warriors. If the four forces fought with their own abilities, the other three forces would not get anything. There were not many treasures. The most precious one was the Godspeed boat. If Luli destroyed it, what was the point of them coming here? If the four forces fought over it, there would be casualties. It would not be worthwhile, even if they got the Godspeed boat. Therefore, Luli's proposal tempted the other three forces. Hu Bugawei sent a message to Mu Wanping and Cui Wushuang. They agreed to work together without any hesitation. Even if they could not get the Godspeed boat, it would be good for the three forces if they could kill Third Brother Meng. They were all sly old foxes. They reacted quickly. The three even put on a show. Hu Bugawei asked Luli to play along. The ending was perfect. The three powerful warriors sneak-attacked Third Master Meng and almost killed him. Even though he escaped with serious injuries, his injuries were serious. His vitality was hurt. It would take him at least 10 years to recover to his peak. Maybe it would affect his cultivation in the future. The Hell Palace left 8 patriarchs. The three forces were satisfied with this fight. Everything happened so fast. From Luli's words to Third Master Meng running away. Only the time for a few breaths had passed. The situation had changed so fast that many onlookers didn't even have time to react. Hiss, hiss, many onlookers stepped back automatically when they saw the bodies floating on the sea. The old guys of the three forces were so cruel. What if they joined hands and killed them as well? This guy is something. Someone turned to Luli with psychic power. He was just a fuse, but he had done it anyway. With a few words, he easily killed a few elders of the Underworld Palace, while Third Master Meng and the others escaped with heavy injuries. If it was anyone else, they would not have such courage and boldness, nor would they have such wit. He still has to die, an old monster sneered. The battle was over, and all that was left was to divide the spoils. To divide the spoils, they must take all of Luli's treasures, not to mention his life. After all, several forces had taken Luli's treasures. They must be killed to prevent future troubles. Mu Wanping, Cui Wushuang said with a smile. Isn't your Mu family good at speed and poisonous insects? What was the use of his Godspeed boat? You can have a Phantom King, but you can give the Godspeed boat to us. Our pavilion master really needs it. Cui Wushuang and Mu Wanping directly ignored the Luosha Palace because the Luosha Palace's people were too few. If the two factions joined hands, the Luosha Palace's people would not be able to escape. Besides, the Luosha Palace had just fought with the Underworld Palace not long ago, and they had not taken revenge for the loss of the god's son. This time, the Mu clan and the Heaven Pavilion were helping the Luosha Palace to vent their anger. The most crucial point was that the Luosha Palace's palace lord had the Godspeed boat. Since he had it, what was the point of having another one? Therefore, the two factions naturally would not pass on this responsibility. Hu Bugawei suddenly laughed, and his smile was a bit wretched. He shook his head and said, I am sorry. Our palace lord said that you cannot take these things. The Luosha Palace will take them. We will compensate you later. Nonsense. Mu Wanping's expression turned cold. He laughed mockingly and said, Your palace lord said that the things should belong to your clan? Our clan head also said that the Godspeed boat must be taken. Hu Bugawei. Cui Wushuang's expression was not good either. He even glanced at Hu Bugawei as if silently saying that he was not tactful and overestimating himself. He said coldly, Don't be unreasonable. You can leave. Don't hurt the harmony. We really can't leave. Hubugue smiled bitterly and bowed to the east. "Welcome, Palace Lord. Welcome, Palace Lord." The elders of Devil Palace all bowed and saluted. Countless people looked to the side. There was a sound of breaking through the air from the east, and then a white light flew over quickly. In an instant, it broke through the encirclement of countless people nearby and arrived at the scene. Godspeed boat. Luli took a look and was surprised. The Godspeed boat was the same as the one he had. He took advantage of the chaos to fly the Godspeed boat back. He thought that when the four forces were in a mess, he could take the chance to run away. He didn't expect that the fight would end in an instant. Even though Luli took the Godspeed boat back, it was pointless. He didn't dare to move. He had to wait for his fate to be decided. Palace Lord? The Palace Lord of the Luosha Palace. Luli squinted. He didn't expect that he could see such a big shot before he died. This man was at the same level as the Palace Master of the Hell Palace. He was one of the most powerful warriors of the Luosha Sea. If he stomped his feet, many people would tremble. Why would the Palace Lord of the Luosha Palace be here? This idea came to everyone's mind. Even Ubugue and the others couldn't figure it out. This was just a small matter. It was understandable to send some patriarchs. No matter how important this matter was, sending a great patriarch was enough. There is no need for the Palace Lord to come in person. When the Luosha Palace and the Hell Palace were fighting, only their great patriarchs were there. The Palace Lord and the Palace Master of the Hell Palace didn't show up. They were the most powerful. They wouldn't show up unless it was something big or it was related to the survival of their forces. Also, the Palace Lord of the Luosha Palace had the Godspeed boat. Taking Luli's Godspeed boat would be pointless. Instead, she would be laughed at by the Luosha Sea, which would lower her status. Well, yes, the Palace Lord of the Luosha Palace was a woman. She was the most famous one at the Luosha Sea. She was beautiful, elegant, and powerful. Most importantly, she had many gigolos. It was said that in her harem, there were all kinds of handsome and fierce men. There were more than 100 of them. There is also a rumor that she cultivated the skill of gathering young to nourishing. She needed many men to be her tripod vessels to help her cultivate. Just think about it. How could a woman like this not be famous? She was cruel and merciless. She didn't have a family or offspring. She suppressed all the heroes on her own and led the Luosha Palace. Yes, she was an outsider. She came to the Luosha Sea more than 500 years ago. She went into the Luosha Palace alone, killed the old Palace Lord of the Luosha Palace, slaughtered his family, and became the new Palace Lord of the Luosha Palace. In the past 500 years, she only fought 3 times. The first time was when she killed the old Palace Lord of the Luosha Palace. The second time was when she killed a great patriarch of the Mu family. The third time was when she killed a very powerful demon of the Luosha Sea. The 3 battles established her prestige and made her the most famous woman at the Luosha Sea. Nobody knew where she came from. She almost never showed up in public. Many things were told by word of mouth. Chapter 2248. Luosha Palace was originally not called Luosha Palace, but 10,000 Devil Palace. After this woman came, it was renamed because this woman's name was Luofian. The 10,000 Demon Hall was a place filled with demons. The original 10,000 Demon Hall did have many demons, but these demons were eventually subdued by Luofian. Just like Hubugue, who was originally an arrogant and unruly person, was now as obedient as a rabbit upon seeing Luofian. Luofian did not come out from the Godspeed boat, nor did any sound come out. However, the Godspeed boat stopping here gave people a great pressure. No one dared to use their divine perception to investigate the situation inside the Godspeed boat. If they angered this grand aunt, they would die a horrible death. The clan of Rakshasa Palace's original boss was smashed to death by this person, smashed into minced meat. After the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, a voice finally came out from the godly speedboat. The voice was gentle like an elegant lady, but the tone was unquestionable. Mu Wanping, Chui Wushuang. Luo Fian called out the names of the 2, and the two immediately felt a chill in their hearts. Both of them bowed and said, "Greetings, Palace Master Luo." Luo Fian did not pause for too long this time. He passed on a message. "Our Rakshasa Palace wants this person. I, Luo Fian, have been unreasonable this time. Go back and tell your pavilion master and clan leader that I will make some concessions in the next battle for the Taichu Temple." Mu Wanping and Cui Wushuang were startled, and their faces were filled with astonishment. Ordinary people might not understand the meaning of the Hall of Absolute Beginning, but they did. Luo Fian was willing to compromise on the matter of the Temple of Taichu for Lu Li, a godly speedboat, a fragment of an emperor weapon, and a phantom king. Although it was just a concession, it did not specify how much. However, a palace lord was equivalent to an emperor. The emperor did not go back on his words. If such a person said that he would make concessions, he would definitely give up a lot of benefits. Compared to what Lu Li had, there was a world of difference. "All right." Mu Wanping cupped his hands and didn't say anything further before waving his hand and leaving with his group. Cui Wushuang bowed and said, "Palace Master Luo, farewell." Swish, swish, swish. Dozens of experts flew into the distance in the blink of an eye, disappearing above the sea. The onlookers nearby did not dare to stay any longer and dispersed one after another. However, countless people had doubts in their minds. They could not figure out why Luo Fian would appear. Would he protect Lu Li? Could it be some people had a bold idea? Luo Fian had taken a fancy to Lu Li? Luo Fian had many boyfriends. It was said that she liked young men the most. Lu Li was young and courageous. He made a mess at the Hell Palace all by himself and disgraced both the Meng family and the Hell Palace. Such a person was considered an outstanding talent, and it was normal for Luo Fian to like him. Some people laughed wretchedly. No matter how outstanding one was, if he became Luo Fian's gigolo, he would be despised by the world. This was like a peerless beauty being taken in as a concubine by a big shot. Was this something to be proud of? At the end of the day, this world was still dominated by men. The probability of a woman becoming a powerhouse was too low. It was a very shameful thing for a man to become a gigolo for a woman. Lu Li did not know much about Luo Fian. He only knew that she was the master of the Palace of Rakshasa. He was surprised that the master of the Palace of Rakshasa was a lady. The departure of Mu Wanping and Cui Wushuang did not make Lu Li overjoyed. Instead, he felt more uneasy. In this world, there was no love without reason, nor was there any hatred without reason. If Luo Fian did not have a request, she would definitely not come to his rescue in person. In other words, if Luo Fian had nothing to do with him, then she might have a bigger scheme for him. Could it be that she knows that I have the holy weapon shard? Lu Li secretly suspected. If she was here for the holy weapon shard, then he would be dead as well. The most valuable things he had were the holy weapon shard and the dragon soul. Maybe she wanted his demonic soul. "Your name is Lu Si?" A gentle voice came from the god speedboat. Lu Li was slightly relieved. The master of the Palace of Rakshasa was talking to him? Did it mean that he still had hope to live? She did not know his real name, which meant that she had nothing to do with him. Could it be that she was really here for the holy weapon shard? Lu Li did not care so much anymore in this situation. His life was in someone's hands. There was no point in struggling. He cupped his fists and said, "Master, my real name is Lu Li. Lu Si is just a pseudonym." "Oh," Luo Fian responded lightly and then asked, "Where did you get the god speedboat?" Lu Li frowned. He thought about it and did not lie. He said, "It belongs to the Heaven's Blood Eagle race. Years ago, I killed a member of the Heaven's Blood Eagle race and was captured by a big shot of their race. I passed by the Devil's Sea, but because of an accident, they were held back by some powerful warriors. I secretly refined the god speedboat and flew into the Devil's Sea." Who Bugue and the others were slightly surprised. Then they understood. The god speedboat was an ancient treasure and very rare. How could Lu Li, a second tribulation warrior, have it? They did not expect that it belonged to the Heaven's Blood Eagle race. "I see," Luo Fian said lightly. "You can escape from the Heaven's Blood Eagle race and make such a big scene in the Devil's Sea. You have disgraced the Hell Palace. You are something. Lu Li was excited again. It seemed that the master of the palace of Rakshasa appreciated him. He still had hope to live. I will give you two choices. What Luo Fian said next extinguished the fire that was just ignited in Lu Li's heart. First, die. Second, join the palace of Rakshasa and never betray or leave. As always, Luo Fian's tone was gentle, but it was unquestionable. If Lu Li chose the first option, Luo Fian wouldn't have to do anything. Hu Bugawei would kill him right away. Hu Bugawei and the others looked at each other and understood why Luo Fian was here. It seemed that Luo Fian valued talent and wanted to recruit Lu Li. Maybe she just happened to pass by and learned about Lu Li's situation. Therefore, she was willing to lower herself to protect Lu Li. Lu Li could make such a big scene at the Hell Island, capture Meng Li and Su Yueqin, escape from Hell Island, and kill the three Rakshasa freaks. All these proved that Lu Li was a talent and his combat strength was proven. More importantly, Lu Li was young and had a lot of room for growth. Lu Li was in a dilemma. Nobody wanted to die. He still had many things to do. Countless people of the Lu family in the second heaven and his wives and concubines were waiting for him to go back. It was good to be alive. Joining the palace of Rakshasa was not a problem, but never betraying or leaving. This was a headache for him. He was going to find Lu Ling. Was he really going to be trapped at the Rakshasa Sea for the rest of his life? There is only hope if I am alive. He remembered what he said to Qin Zhan and made up his mind. Luo Fian and the others couldn't be monitoring him all the time, could they? If there was a chance, he could just sneak out of the Rakshasa Sea. Would Luo Fian come after him in person? He bowed and shouted, Lu Li is willing to join the palace of Rakshasa and serve the master. Okay, Luo Fian answered. Then, the godly speedboat glowed, and a golden rune floated out from the godly speedboat. In an instant, it was imprinted between Lu Li's eyebrows and vanished. Chapter 2249 Mysterious Heaven Talisman, Son of God. After Hu Bugawei and the others heard the first few sentences, their expressions changed, and their eyes showed fear. After hearing the last sentence, their expressions changed again. Ordinary people didn't know about the mysterious heaven talisman, but the higher-ups of the demon palace did. This was a very powerful magic of Luo Fian. It could silently penetrate into your soul and bury a nail in your soul. If this thing was not used, no one would notice. It was useless even if you had a powerful demon soul. This was because when this mysterious heaven talisman was inserted, there would be no attack, and the demon soul would not defend. It was silent. You could feel that there was a foreign object entering your soul, but there was nothing you could do. At this moment, Lu Li was like this. He found that a talisman entered his soul, but there was no reaction from the dragon's soul. After the talisman entered his soul, it dispersed, turned into a strange energy, and disappeared into the depths of his soul. Lu Li didn't feel any discomfort, nor did he feel that his soul was being controlled. It was the same as usual, but Lu Li still felt very uncomfortable, as if there was a time bomb buried in his soul. If he was not careful, the bomb would explode, and his soul would be torn apart. This feeling was very uncomfortable, as if there were a few maggots on his back. It was very disgusting, very uncomfortable. The mysterious heaven talisman was one of Luo Fian's super magic skills. Of course, this magic skill could be restrained. At least, Hu Bugawei could stand it, and so could some elders of the demon palace. Luo Fian would not use the mysterious heaven talisman on everyone, but there were some people in the demon palace who were not loyal enough, and were wavering, who would be planted with the mysterious heaven talisman by Luo Fian. Luo Fian planted the mysterious heaven talisman on Lu Li, which showed that he did not trust him. Of course, Lu Li was an outsider, and it was difficult to gain trust immediately. Compared to the mysterious heaven talisman, Hu Bugawei and the others were more surprised by the position of the Divine Son. The Divine Son and the Divine Daughter were the candidates for the next leader of a force. They were usually the son, daughter, or grandson or granddaughter of the master of a force. They were people of high status in a force. Luo Fian had no descendants, and the previous generation's divine son was the grandson of a supreme elder. He was also a talented and extraordinary person. Unfortunately, he failed to force himself on Sui Yueqin and was chopped into minced meat by Sui Yueqin. After the death of the previous generation's divine son, the Rakshasa Palace actually had many candidates. After all, the Rakshasa Palace had many experts, and their descendants had some good seedlings. During this period of time, these young masters were also competing intensely for the position of the Son of God. Although the divine son might not necessarily become the palace lord in the end, the resources, treasures, and status would all be very high. It was almost certain that he would become an elder with real power in the future. More than a dozen young masters and young mistresses were competing fiercely. If they didn't have a divine son, they could have a divine daughter. Hubugue's family had a kid who was competing. There was no lack of people with extraordinary talent in this group of people, and there were also people at the fourth tribulation realm. The group of people had competed for so long, but Luo Fian did not even nod his head. But now, he gave the position to a second tribulation heavenly god so easily, or did he join the Rakshasa Palace unwillingly? Hubugue believed that this matter would definitely cause a huge sensation when he got back. He reckoned that Rakshasa Island would be turned upside down and there would be no peace. Hubugue, take him back. Don't let anything happen to him on the way, Luo Fian said lightly. The Godspeed boat streaked across the sky and flew away. The group of people finally came to their senses. A few elders looked at each other and smiled bitterly. The person they all wanted to kill not long ago had suddenly become the son of Rakshasa Palace. The Son of God had a special status and could be on an equal footing with Hubugue. Although the actual status and power were far apart, everyone still felt a little unbalanced and found it hard to accept. Son of God Lu, let's leave the vicinity first. Hubugue thought about it. No matter what, Luo Fian had given the order. This outcome could not be changed, so he could only accept it. Luli would be the new son of Rakshasa Palace in the future. He might not have to be courteous, but he had to at least put on a good appearance. Otherwise, he would anger Luo Fian. Okay, what could Luli do? He did not want to be the son of God at all. If it were someone else, they would probably be ecstatic, but he was not interested. The problem was that Luo Fian had planted the mysterious heaven talisman, so he could only stay in the Rakshasa Palace obediently for the time being. If he could not find a way to crack the mysterious heaven talisman, he could not go anywhere and could only die of old age in the Rakshasa Palace. However, to be able to keep his life was better than anything else. This time, Luli thought he was going to die for sure. Unexpectedly, there was light at the end of the tunnel. He followed Hubugue and the others and flew towards the northeast, wondering why Luo Fian did this. Is it because I took down Sui Yueqin? Humiliated the Hell Palace? Luli thought of a reason. He was a disgrace to the Hell Palace. As long as he was alive, the Hell Palace could not wash away the shame. Luo Fian took him in and put him in the position of the Son of God. This was a slap in the face to the Hell Palace. Previously, the son of Rakshasa Palace was killed by Sui Yueqin. The Rakshasa Palace was humiliated. Now, it was equivalent to taking back a city. In other words, Luli was a tool that Luo Fian used to regain his face. Big shots cared about face the most. For the sake of face, Luo Fian lowered himself to save Luli once. So what if he gave up some benefits? No matter how he thought about it, this was the only explanation that made sense. Luo Fian would not be interested in the Godspeed boat and Luli's treasures. Even if they were holy weapon fragments, Luo Fian would have them. It was possible that a person like him would have a complete imperial weapon. After flying for more than 4 hours, they arrived at a small island. After they entered the island, they entered a portal in a castle. After entering the portal, Luli realized that he was not teleported away. Instead, he entered a strange, small world. This small world was filled with flames, and the temperature was very high. Son of God Lu, this is a secret world that we control. Hubugue explained, there are some crystals here that are not bad. They are good materials for forging artifacts. Of course, more importantly, this place is used for teleportation. This place is connected to 6 islands, which can shorten the time of teleportation. Understood, understood. Luli nodded slightly and then cupped his fists. Lord who? Can you introduce me to the other lords? I have just joined a Rakshasa palace and know nothing. I hope that you can take care of me in the future. Sure, sure. Ubugawe put on a fake smile and introduced the patriarchs behind him. Those patriarchs did not change their minds, but on the surface, they had to respect Lu Li. After all, the Son of God was above them. Son of God Lu. While flying, Ubugawe explained the situation of the Rakshasa palace to Lu Li. Since Luo Fian had said it in public, Lu Li's position as the Son of God was secured. Naturally, he had to explain the situation of the Rakshasa palace to Lu Li. After chatting for more than 2 hours, Lu Li had a general understanding of the situation of the Rakshasa palace. His first feeling was that it was not easy to mingle in the Rakshasa palace. Son of God Lu. Chapter 2250. The Rakshasa Palace used to be called the Hall of Demons. It was founded by a peerless old demon who gathered many demons. That old demon had unparalleled battle prowess and pretty good methods. He deterred a group of demons and became a very powerful faction. The Hall of Demons was the #1 force in the Rakshasa Sea. Mu family, Hell Palace, and Heaven Pavilion were suppressed. However, that old demon did not have long to live. He died in less than 1,000 years. After the old demon's death, the Hall of Demons almost collapsed. Fortunately, the old demon's son managed to survive with the help of the old demon's remaining power. However, the old demon's son's combat power and means were not outstanding. Therefore, many demons were not convinced, and the Rakshasa Palace became divided. Several old demons each pulled a group of people. There were many mountains inside. The Rakshasa Palace was chaotic at that time. There were serious internal conflicts, and they were at the bottom of the 4 forces. This situation was not improved until the arrival of Luo Fian. Luo Fian suppressed all the factions with absolute combat power and ruthless means. Now, the Rakshasa Palace seemed to be in harmony and no longer dared to fight among themselves. Of course, this was on the surface. In reality, the Rakshasa Palace was still divided into several factions, fighting for power. They did not dare to act recklessly on the surface, but they often made small moves in the dark. Ubugawe was the second son of a faction. He was the elder of the Hall of Battle. The Hall of Battle was his territory, and he was backed by a great elder. The Rakshasa Palace had 3 great elders. These were the 3 factions, plus a chief elder. There were 4 factions in total. The great elder did not do anything, but secretly supported a group of elders, such as Ubugawe. This was all told by Ubugawe. The great elder behind Ubugawe was nicknamed the Rain Demon. This was a very famous demon in the Rakshasa Palace. He had lived for more than 100,000 years and had been in the Rakshasa Sea for tens of thousands of years. His combat power was #1 after Luo Fian. In the Rakshasa Palace, he could be said to be above tens of thousands of people. Ubugawe told him these things. The meaning was clear. He hoped that Lu Li would stand with them. Ubugawe did not care about Lu Li's combat power, but the position of the Son of God was very special. Ubugawe hinted that if Lu Li stood with them, his future in the Rakshasa Palace would be very good. At least he could help Lu Li block a lot of things. Coercion and bribery? Lu Li sneered inwardly. These were all Ubugawe's one-sided statements. He did not dare to take sides now. Besides, he was the divine child personally appointed by Luo Fian. What if he carelessly stood in line and angered Luo Fian? He would first go to the Rakshasa Palace and stay there for a period of time to understand the situation. This was Lu Li's strategy. He was the chosen one. Would anyone have the guts to kill him in public? Lu Li did not say anything, nor did Ubugawe say anything. The group passed through the secret realm, entered an exit, and appeared on another island. This island was not far from Rakshasa Island. If they flew at full speed, it would only take them a day's journey. Luosha Island was at the easternmost part of Luosha Sea. It was a very large island. On the surface, this island looked like it was controlled by a big family, but in fact, it was secretly controlled by Devil Palace. Swish, swish, swish. The exit was in a manor in the city. After who Bugue and the others appeared, dozens of people flew out from another huge manor and quickly arrived here. Luli used his psychic power to check and found that the dozens of people were not particularly strong. There were only 3 fourth tribulation warriors. What surprised him was that there was a young beauty who was also a 4th tribulation warrior. And among this group of people, it seemed that this beauty was the leader. After who Bugue saw this woman, a faint smile appeared on his lips. He did not do anything, but stood at the gate of the castle and waited quietly. Dozens of people flew over and landed in front of Ubugue. The woman was wearing a fiery red dress. She had a hot figure and was dressed very provocatively. There was even a slit at the bottom, revealing her snow-white and slender calves. A sweet smile appeared on her face. She bowed and said, "Greetings, Uncle Hu." "Greetings, uncles." "Little Pepper, why are you here?" Ubugue said with a smile. He looked at an old man behind him. The old man bowed and said, "Greetings, Patriarch Hu." "Greetings, patriarchs." "Don't mention it, Patriarch Lu." Ubugue waved his hand and leaned slightly to one side. He pointed to Lu Li and said, "This is Lu Li, the divine son appointed by the palace master. Everyone come and greet him. Divine son Lu, let me introduce you. This is Lu Qianqian, the granddaughter of Great Elder Lu. We all call her Little Pepper. This is Elder Lu Cheng, the guardian elder of Changlong Island." "Uncle Hu, what did you say?" Lu Qianqian's sweet smile changed in the blink of an eye. Her eyes were filled with surprise, and her pretty face turned cold. She pointed to Lu Li and said, "Him? Divine son? Uncle Hu, are you sure?" "Nonsense." Ubugue pulled a long face and reprimanded. "Lu Qianqian, what's with your attitude? Put your hand down. This is the divine son appointed by the palace master. Apologize to the divine son now." This Elder Lu Chengsheng and the group of people he brought along all had a look of astonishment on their faces. If these words were not said by Ubugue, none of them would have believed it. A 2-tribulation divine god? How could he be the divine son? It should be known that the weakest of the people competing for the divine son were at least at the peak of the 3rd tribulation, and there were many 4th tribulation warriors. This little Pepper wanted to compete. Once she was promoted, there would be no divine son in the demon palace, only a goddess. Therefore, little Pepper's expression at this moment could be understood. Her position had been taken, and most importantly, it was a person who looked like a good-for-nothing who had taken her position. How could she not be angry? Lu Qianqian did not apologize, but withdrew her hand that was pointing at Lu Li's nose. She did not even look at Lu Li. She cupped her hands to Ubugue and flew away. Then, a teleportation formation lit up, and she was teleported away. Lu Li's expression was calm from beginning to end. Even when Lu Qianqian pointed at his nose, he did not say anything. He glanced at Ubugue out of the corner of his eye and sneered inwardly. Ubugue, this old fox, must have done this on purpose? This was clearly a show of strength to him. When he went to Demon Island, there would be countless open spears and hidden arrows waiting for him. The group of people competing for the position of the divine son and goddess would swarm over, wanting to take him down. At that time, he could prove to Luo Fian that they were the most suitable to be the divine son and goddess. Ubugue was pressuring him so that he would submit to their side. Luli did not have any backing. Although it was Luo Fian who picked him, would Luo Fian care about this? Luo Fian would not value a divine son who could not convince the masses. If he was assassinated, she would only give an order to punish him. Luli looked at Elder Lu and the others and found a trace of unfriendliness in their eyes. It was obvious that this group of people were from Elder Lu's side. His heart became heavy. It would not be easy to be the divine son. Whatever, I will deal with it when it comes. Chapter 2251. The Rakshasa Island was one of the 4 islands of the Rakshasa Sea. It was made up of 1 main island and 3 satellite islands. The main island was large as hundreds of Oman islands. There were 3 main cities, more than 100 big cities, and thousands of small cities. The terrain of the island was strange. There were many mountains, blessed lands, caves, and other strange terrains. The Rakshasa city was in the middle of the main island. There was the largest, blessed land with 99 mountains. Inside the mountains were palaces where hundreds of thousands of people lived. This was the core area of the Rakshasa palace. Most of the patriarchs and powerful warriors and their families lived here. This was the holy land of the Rakshasa palace. It was the goal of all disciples to live here. The Blue Cloud Peak. This peak was near the main peak, the Fairy Peak. Only Luo Fian lived here. No patriarch was qualified to live here. Of course, it was said that there were more than 100 male pets here. But they never went out. They were like canaries. Many people at the Rakshasa palace had never seen them. Maybe only some powerful patriarchs knew some inside information. Luli was settled at the Blue Cloud Peak. He had an independent manor with 18 maids and a team of escorts. He had thought that as soon as he came here, a group of young masters and young ladies would come to him and challenge him to a duel. Little did he expect that after he came here, it had been quiet. Nobody came to disturb him. Hubuhue brought him here and told him to rest for a couple of days. Luli could walk around and familiarize himself with the surroundings. If he needed anything, he could tell the escort leader. After a while, he would officially introduce Luli to all the patriarchs and disciples and announce his identity. Little did he expect that he had to wait for 4 or 5 days. Since nobody came to make trouble, Luli was happy to have some free time. He would wander around the yard, chat with the escort leader every now and then, play with the maids, or cultivate for a while. His days were comfortable. How comfortable it would be if I could stay like this forever. On the 6th day, Luli took a comfortable bath in the pool. He was about to cultivate when a maid came in with a new set of clothes in her hand. She knelt on the ground and said, "Deity's son, this is from the Hall of Internal Affairs. It is for you. Please change into it." A leader from the Internal Affairs Division said that he will take you to the Hall of Patriarchs later. Got it. You can go now. Luli waved his hand, and the maid left with a blush. She stared at Luli's bare chest, feeling shy. Luli stood up emotionlessly. This maid was not professional at all. It was obvious that she was trying to seduce him. Since she was able to climb into his bed, her status as a maidservant would immediately rise. This was understandable. Luli put on the new robe. The craftsmanship was exquisite. The robe was black with white edges. There were some dark golden patterns on it. Luli sensed that the patterns were all divine glyphs. This was a piece of treasure, so its defensive power should be quite good. Looking at himself in the mirror, Luli noticed that his temperament had improved. He looked like an elegant young master. Clothes make the man, and gold makes the Buddha. Luli didn't mind. He didn't rely on his looks to make a living, nor did he want to become Luo Fian's boy toy. Why would he wear such gorgeous clothes? Besides, he often fought and relied on his physical strength, especially when he had to release his dragon wings. Where would he find so many expensive clothes for him to change into? After he tidied himself up, Luli walked out. The maids outside were stunned. Luli was not particularly handsome, but he had been through so many things and his hands were stained with blood. Over the years, he had developed a special temperament that made him stand out from the crowd. He gave people the feeling of a real man, an attractive man, not the kind of cream of a handsome young man who only looked beautiful on the outside, but not on the inside. Luli glanced at the maids and walked out. He saw a middle-aged warrior who bowed to Luli and said, "Greetings, divine son. Let's go." Luli waved his hand. The leader of the Hall of Internal Affairs led the way. Jian Xiong, the leader of escorts, followed Luli with 4 others. Those escorts were all warriors of the 3rd tribulation. This was the core area of the Palace of Rakshasa. Nobody could break in. Therefore, the escorts were just for show. Big shots liked to be ostentatious. Luli was the divine son, and his status was higher than the average patriarchs. Naturally, the escort leader thought Luli needed to be ostentatious as well. Luli was not a fan of ostentatiousness, but as a newcomer, he needed someone to guide him. Therefore, Luli didn't object to the escort leader bringing someone with him. Lu Li's manor was on the hillside. There were no other manors nearby. The environment was beautiful and clean, a good place to live. The leader of the Hall of Internal Affairs led Lu Li to the top of the mountain where there were many buildings. There was a huge hall, the Hall of Patriarchs of the Palace of Rakshasa. Every time something big happened, most of the patriarchs would come here to discuss. Hubuhui told Lu Li to wait for a couple of days so that he could summon the patriarchs outside. It was the first time the Divine Son was meeting everyone, so it must be formal. Otherwise, if Lu Li went out in the future and didn't know the Divine Son, it would be the Hall of Patriarchs' fault. Luo Fian didn't care about Lu Li's affairs after she came back. But if anyone dared to ignore her orders, it would be disrespectful to Luo Fian. And those who did not respect Luo Fian were all dead. Lu Li walked along a white jade path to the top of the mountain. There was a thin layer of white mist on the peak. Looking into the distance, he saw countless fine jade palaces scattered in picturesque disorder. Right in front of him was a huge plaza with a statue of Luo Fian. It was very lifelike. In the white mist, the statue looked particularly mysterious and holy. It really is a big force, a big sect. Lu Li glanced over and exclaimed to himself. It was not that big families at the second heaven didn't have many palaces, but they didn't have this kind of grandeur. One look and one would feel it was dignified, solemn, and awe-inspiring. Right in front of the plaza was a huge hall. The hall was extraordinarily magnificent. There were 2 rows of escorts on both sides of the gate. All of them were wearing gorgeous armors, holding weapons in their hands, and looking solemn. The patriarchs must be in the hall. Apart from the escorts, Lu Li saw some people outside the Hall of Patriarchs. When he looked at a girl in a red robe, the corner of his mouth curled up into a gentle smile. What was to come would come. There was no hiding. There were 9 young masters and young ladies here. Each of them had a group of people behind them. At the moment, they were gathered together in 2s and 3s. As soon as Lu Li set foot on the top of the mountain, many people looked at him. Surprise, jealousy, contempt, and killing intent. Lu Li saw many emotions in those eyes, especially in a tall young man who was surrounded by 3 other men. Lu Li saw the undisguised, murderous intent. This man didn't look like an average playboy. He had curly hair and a lion-like build. He emitted a ferocious chi and energy like a beast. One look, and Lu Li could tell that he was a tough character. The escorts behind Lu Li frowned. Their lips moved as if they wanted to say something, but Lu Li waved his hand and walked straight ahead. Chapter 2252. Lu Li had made up his mind before he went to the Hall of Patriarchs. He had picked up his life, and he didn't mind losing it at the Palace of Devils. Therefore, he was fearless. If these people wanted to make trouble for him, then he would fight them to the end. He walked out in large strides. He was dressed in gorgeous Divine Son clothes, and in addition to his extraordinary bearing, he walked with a majestic gait like a dragon or a tiger. He seemed to have his own style. There were 5 young masters and 3 young ladies in front of him. The young masters were handsome, and the young ladies were beautiful. They were born in big families, and their genes had been passed down from generation to generation. What was more, they had been taking all kinds of elixirs since they were young. It was hard for them not to be good-looking. Lu Li's bearing was extraordinary. However, in the eyes of the young masters and young ladies, he seemed to be putting on airs. After all, he was a second tribulation divine god. Those young masters and young ladies were at least at the peak of the third tribulation. The curly-haired young man, the brown-haired young man, and Little Pepper were all warriors of the fourth tribulation. They didn't know much about Lu Li because Hubugue didn't say anything. Little Pepper and the others tried to get some information, but Hubugue stopped them from doing so. Clearly, Hubugue had concealed Lu Li's information on purpose so that the young masters and young ladies would make trouble for Lu Li. There were several advantages to this. First, Lu Li would feel pressured so that he would have to pick a side. Second, Lu Li's strength could be tested. As for the third, if Lu Li could win, then he could show the young masters and young ladies the immensity of heaven and earth. Lu Li walked to the front of the hall. The young masters and young ladies moved. They walked toward Lu Li and stood in a straight line, blocking his way. Divine Son, the curly-haired young man, is Tan Long, a disciple of great patriarch Tan Yu. The one in the red dress is Lu Qianqian, nicknamed Little Pepper. She is the granddaughter of Chief Patriarch. The brown-haired young man with dark skin is Zhang Yi, the great-grandson of Great Patriarch Zhang Yun. The three of them are all Fourth Tribulation divine gods, and the others are disciples of other patriarchs. Divine Son, be careful. Jian Xiong, the leader of escorts, sent a message to Lu Li. After Jian Xiong was sent here, he knew that his fate was tied to Lu Li's for the time being. If Lu Li could not get up, he would suffer with him. If Lu Li could stand firm, then he could enjoy the limelight with Lu Li in the future. Therefore, he sent a reminder to Lu Li. Lu Li nodded. Jian Xiong's reminder was timely. The other warriors at the peak of the Third Tribulation were not enough to threaten him. But the information on the three Fourth Tribulation gods was very important. Lu Li walked to the front of the crowd and stood there. He squinted, but didn't say anything. He stood there with a calm demeanor, unmoving like a mountain. If Lu Li were a patriarch at the Fourth Tribulation realm, he would have a different bearing standing there. However, Lu Li was only at the Second Tribulation realm, which was ridiculous. It was like a child carrying a sword on his back, pretending to be a peerless expert. Who are you? The dark-skinned, brown-haired young man, Zhang Ye, opened his mouth. He raised his eyebrows and said with contempt, "This is the Elders' Hall. Unauthorized people are not allowed to trespass." Zhang Ye was obviously lying through his teeth. Lu Li was accompanied by a commander from the Division of Internal Affairs. Besides, Lu Li was wearing the Divine Son's attire, so it was impossible for Zhang Ye not to recognize him. The commander from the Division of Internal Affairs was about to say something when Lu Li waved his hand to stop him. Clearly, these people were here to make trouble. What was the point of reasoning with them? Lu Li said coldly with a straight face, "This is the Elders' Hall. Who are you? Are you an escort here? Patriarchs? How dare you block the way at the gate?" Lu Li was once an emperor, and he was the overlord of many universes. His voice was thunderous, and his momentum was intimidating. He looked like a patriarch with great abilities. Lu Li's momentum did not frighten anyone. Instead, Zhang Ye and the others found it funny. Zhang Ye raised his head, squinted at Lu Li, and said, "You don't need to know who we are. If you want to enter the Elders' Hall, you must go through us." The Elders' Hall is not a place for everyone. Those who are not powerful are not qualified to enter. Zhang Ye bared his fangs. His eyes were filled with fighting spirit. He was provoking Lu Li directly. Lu Li smiled lightly. If it were Tan Long, he would have some concerns. But he was not afraid of Zhang Ye. Lu Li raised his eyebrows and asked, "You want to fight? Where should I fight? Right here?" He had to fight. Not only did he have to fight, he had to do it beautifully and cleanly. Lu Li's voice was loud enough for the Elders' Hall of Patriarchs to hear him. If there were no objections, then he could fight here. "Sure." Zhang Ye grinned. Pointing to the side of the plaza, he said, "Let's go and learn from each other. Let's not hurt each other. How about it?" Whoosh! Zhang Ye flew up to the left side of the plaza. Lu Li threw a look to the Elders' Hall. Nobody said anything. Lu Li had no more concerns. Whoosh! Lu Li flew up, not intending to make a move. The mountain glowed in his hand. Phantom King, Ghost Shadow, and Worms of the Void came out and whooshed toward Zhang Ye. Buzzing, almost at the same time, many psychic powers came out from the hall. Lu Li could tell that there were at least 100 of them. Some of the psychic powers were strong and well hidden. Lu Li could sense some psychic powers that were integrated with the wind with the mark of Tao. As soon as Phantom King came out, his ferocious energy spread out. Tan Long, Lu Qianqian, and the others were taken aback. Zhang Ye felt the pressure as well. Lu Li did not hold back. As soon as Phantom King and Ghost Shadow came out, they whooshed toward Phantom King from the left and right. Zhang Ye took out a black iron rod, which was glowing. Ignoring Ghost Shadow and the Worms of the Void, Zhang Ye smashed at Phantom King with the iron rod. The iron rod in Zhang Ye's hand was clearly a piece of treasure. The air was glowing, and Zhang Ye felt like he was not swinging a rod, but a mountain. Boom, boom, boom. As Zhang Ye swung his iron rod, the sky was filled with cracks. It was as if the entire sky was being crushed by him. The eyes of the two women below him shone with admiration. Silver spear and wax tip. Luli threw a glance and put on a sarcastic smile. Luli had spent his entire life in battles. His eyes were sharp. This Zhang Ye seemed to be intimidating, but he was full of loopholes. Luli had overestimated Zhang Ye. He even sent out Ghost Shadow. With Phantom King, Luli could kill Zhang Ye easily. Whoosh! As Luli had expected, Phantom King dodged Zhang Ye's move and scratched Zhang Ye's back with his claws. Crack! The armor on Zhang Ye's back was cracked. Phantom King's claws left a bloody mark. Seeing this, Luli waved his hand. Ghost Shadow and the Worms of the Void came back. The Phantom King could easily crush a martial artist of this level. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Phantom King kept moving around and turned into streaks of dark blur in midair. Every now and then, Zhang Ye would groan. He waved his iron rod, but could not even touch Phantom King's hair. Come back. Chapter 2253. Luli sounded arrogant, but the winner had the right to be arrogant. At this moment, Zhang Ye was in a sorry state. His body was in tatters, and his shoulder bones were cracked. If Luli didn't call the Phantom King back, Zhang Ye would be dead after a few more attacks. Zhang Ye was humiliated. His scratched face was filled with anger. All the patriarchs were paying attention to this fight. He had disgraced himself in front of so many elders. How could he live with his head held high in the future? He stared at Luli and shouted, "What is so great about relying on battle pets? Come and fight me yourself if you have the guts." As soon as he finished his words, even Zhang Ye himself felt something was wrong. The escorts behind Luli showed obvious disdain on their faces, including the escorts behind the young masters. They also smiled in embarrassment. The world did not care about means, only about the ending. It didn't matter if you used poison, tricks, force, or even evil methods. As long as you could kill your enemies, others would admit that you were powerful. When fighting with enemies on the battlefield, the enemies would try hundreds of ways to kill you. The enemy wouldn't openly fight with you, but would the enemy fight with you according to your request? For example, when a powerful warrior fought with you, would you ask him to lower his realm to fight with you? Lu Qianqian's face was burning. Tan Long turned his head to the side as if he felt it was shameful to fight with Zhang Ye. Was he a sore loser? Luli smiled and said, "I can do it. We don't need anything and just fight with our bare hands. That'll be fair, right?" Since Zhang Ye asked Luli not to use his beast, and Luli asked him not to use his treasures, it was a reasonable request. Zhang Ye's eyes glowed. He didn't expect that Luli would be willing to fight. He put away his iron rod, nodded, and said, "Come on, I won't use anything. I will fight you like this." Whoosh! Luli dashed forward like a cannonball with his happy steps. He reached Zhang Ye in an instant. With a mocking smile on his face, Luli swung his fist at Zhang Ye. Seeing the smile on Luli's face, Zhang Ye was enraged. He didn't use any skills. He mobilized divine energy and punched at Luli. Boom! With a muffled explosion, Luli didn't move a bit, but Zhang Ye flew out like a cannonball. The sound of bones breaking rang out as Zhang Ye spat out a mouthful of blood. In the end, he slammed heavily onto the ground. If there weren't any divine inscriptions protecting the square, a huge hole would have been smashed into it. Tan Long and the others were stunned, while Little Chili Pepper's mouth was wide open in shock. Tan Long reacted quickly. His face sank as he spat out a few words, "Supreme Divine Body." Although Zhang Ye had just broken through to the fourth tribulation realm, a fourth tribulation was still a fourth tribulation. His physical strength was extremely powerful. Luli was able to shatter Zhang Ye's bones with a punch at the second tribulation realm. This could only be explained by his supreme divine body. Luli didn't look at Zhang Ye again. He put away the Phantom King and landed slowly. Looking at Tan Long and the others, he asked, "How is it? Do you still want to fight?" The young master's eyes were filled with anger, but they didn't make a move. Instead, they looked at Tan Long, Little Chili Pepper, and the others looked at Tan Long as well. Now that Zhang Ye was defeated, Tan Long was probably the only one here who could defeat Lu Li. Tan Long began to gather his chi and energy, but he didn't fight right away. He just stared at Lu Li like a beast. Lu Li smiled and said, "Don't stare at me like that. If you're not convinced, then fight." Back then, Su Yueqin stared at me like this. Later on, I defeated her, and even her elixir was destroyed. I have killed warriors of the fourth tribulation before. Not long ago, I killed 3 old devils. I think they were called the 3 Rakshasa. You are not a match for me. Lu Li's tone was extremely arrogant. Tan Long and the others were taken aback. Hu Bugui didn't say anything about Lu Li, so they didn't know. Su Yueqin, the goddess of the underworld, the 3 Rakshasa? Tan Long and the others were stunned. Then they opened their eyes wide. They had heard of the name of the person Lu Li was talking about. They were all familiar with Su Yueqin because she was the one who chopped up the godson of the last generation. The 3 Rakshasa had been famous for a long time. They didn't think highly of Lu Li, but their abilities were beyond doubt. Lu Li said he captured the goddess of the underworld and killed the 3 Rakshasa. This made the group of people very shocked. They remembered a rumor that something big happened at the underworld a while ago, and the entire underworld was alarmed. It was said that a second tribulation divine, immortal, kidnapped the goddess of the underworld. He escaped from the Hell Island and had the god speedboat with him. The other 3 forces were alarmed. Patriarch, who went out a while ago because of this. Lu Li was a second tribulation divine immortal, and he was brought back by Patriarch Hu. That made sense. Tan Long was tempted to fight Lu Li, but he didn't dare to do so now. He was confident in his abilities, but he wasn't so arrogant that he could capture Su Yueqin and escape from the Hell Island. Not to mention the 3 Rakshasa. He couldn't kill any of them, let alone 3. All right. From the Hall of Patriarchs came a majestic voice. Hu Bugui walked out, waved his hand to Tan Long and the others and said, "Are you done? If you are, piss off. You little bastards, you have no manners." Little Chili Pepper and the others stuck out their tongues. Tan Long threw Lu Li a glance, cupped his fist to Hu Bugui, and left. "God Lu, come in." Hu Bugui waved at Lu Li with a warm smile. He didn't explain anything. Lu Li was not an idiot. He had used psychic power just now. Explaining too much would only be superfluous. Lu Li acted as if nothing had happened. He strode over and bowed to Hu Bugui. Hu Bugui took Lu Li's hand and walked inside with a smile. Lu Li was unhappy. Why was Hu Bugui being so intimate? Was he holding Lu Li's hand to show the other patriarchs that they were close? Or was he trying to imply that Lu Li was one of them? But Hu Bugui was holding Lu Li's hand. If Lu Li were to break free, he would offend Hu Bugui completely. Therefore, Lu Li had to follow Hu Bugui in with a straight face. There was a very wide hall inside. Upon entering, one could see 4 huge black stone pillars. The stone pillars were engraved with mysterious patterns, and they looked very mysterious. There were rows of stone chairs on the left and right sides of the hall. There were 10 stone chairs in the center. 5 of them were occupied, and the last one should be Patriarch Hu's. There were 70 or 80 people on the left and right sides of the hall. Most of them were elderly. Some of them looked young, but they were old. Guys, let me make some formal introductions. Chapter 2254. Ha, ha, ha. Heroes come from the young. Divine Son Lu, you have helped us vent our anger. That's right, Divine Son. The Hell Palace won't be able to hold their heads up for a while. Divine Son, well done. It's a pity that you didn't bring Su Yueqin back. She has the astral moon body. If the Divine Son takes Su Yueqin as a female slave, then our Rakshasa Palace will be greatly respected. You didn't kill Ming the Third? If you did, we would have made a fortune. The 3 devils of Rakshasa have done a lot of evil. They have suffered the consequences of their own actions. Well done, Divine Son. Compliments were heard in the hall. They were from some regular patriarchs. Divine Son's status was higher than that of regular patriarchs, but he had no real power. Some patriarchs did. In fact, these patriarchs with real power could have ignored Luli. But everyone knew how to put up a front. It was not a problem for them to say some nice words. None of the patriarchs sitting at the head of the table said anything. Luli knew that they were the real big shots, people who were on the same level as Ubugue. Ubugue introduced the patriarchs one by one. Those sitting at the head of the table were the most powerful and most capable people in the Rakshasa Palace. They were the chief patriarch who was in charge of all affairs of the Rakshasa Palace, the discipline patriarch, the external affair patriarch, the internal affair patriarch, the intelligence patriarch, and Ubugue, the leader of the battle hall. There were 10 seats. If all of them were occupied, there would be 3 great patriarchs and 1 patriarch with a higher status. But the 3 great patriarchs didn't care about these chores. The other patriarch had been cultivating in seclusion and rarely showed up. The group of patriarchs were all 4th tribulation warriors. There were nearly 100 of them, and this was not all the patriarchs of the Rakshasa Palace. Also, many died in the war with the Hell Palace. The depth of the resources of the Rakshasa Palace could be seen. Ubugue and the others were clearly at the later stage of the 4th tribulation. Chief Patriarch was unpredictable. Luli felt that he might be at the peak of the 4th tribulation. There were also the 3 great patriarchs and Luo Fian. Luli suspected that they might be at the 5th tribulation. After all, the great elder might be at the peak of the 4th tribulation. Even if the Grand Elder was also at the peak of the 4th tribulation, Luo Fian alone could suppress the entire Rakshasa Palace. Without absolute combat power, how could he suppress a group of demons? A great emperor was a 7th tribulation, a feudal lord was a 6th tribulation, and Devil Sea's strongest expert was a 5th tribulation heaven god. This was understandable. After all, the Rakshasa Sea was very big. Countless demons swarmed in here. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the strongest among the demons was a 5th tribulation powerhouse. Chief Patriarch and the others were indifferent to Luli. They only gave him some words of encouragement. Luli greeted the patriarchs one by one. He was polite to all the patriarchs. This caused many of the elders to be stunned. Was this the same person who was arrogant outside, just now? Some of the elders even felt overwhelmed by the favor. After all, although they were elders, they did not have any real power and were not well received in Rakshasa Palace. There were more than 100 elders, but there was only one divine child. Luli had to be arrogant when he needed to be, low-key when he needed to be, polite when he needed to be, and angry when he needed to be. Just now, he had been arrogant to establish his authority. Now, he had to be low-key to leave a good impression among the patriarchs. Usually, the old guys wouldn't care about young people's business. As long as no one died, the rest was not a big deal. But he could not afford to offend the old guys. Otherwise, he would suffer in the future. He had just arrived and had no background. If he accidentally offended the patriarchs with real power, he would have a hard time in the future. After a long introduction, Chief Patriarch asked Luli to sit in the first seat on the left. Then, the patriarchs began their discussion. Divine Child usually had the right to listen in. Divine Child would receive intensive training. In the future, they might not be the successor of the Palace Master, but they would at least be one of the patriarchs with real power. Of course, Divine Child had no real power. The patriarchs could only listen in. If he had to make some suggestions, the other patriarchs would take it as a reference. Naturally, Luli would not say anything. He sat on the side, keeping a low profile. He kept his head down, like an old monk in meditation. The discussion lasted for a long time. They talked about many things, such as the allocation of resources, the arrangement of the secret realms, and some internal and external affairs. There were also reports from the patriarchs in charge of guarding the places they were guarding. The meeting lasted for an entire day and was only dismissed at night. Luli felt sleepy. He didn't like to deal with these trivial things. He never did before. The Rakshasa Palace had a large territory. They controlled many secret realms, small worlds, broken spaces, and some island secrets. There were so many people and so many powerful warriors. All of them needed resources. The Rakshasa island alone could not support so many people. Therefore, the Rakshasa palace actually controlled a large territory and more places they secretly controlled. All these places needed to be managed. Naturally, there were more trivial things to deal with. After the meeting, Hubugue kindly took Lu Li to his side chamber. Lu Li wouldn't go to Hubugue's side for the time being, but Hubugue had sent a message of goodwill, and he was a patriarch of the Hall of Warfare. Lu Li didn't have to turn him away. In the side chamber, Hubugue said many things to Lu Li. The gist of it was that Lu Li should focus on cultivation, and the Hall of Internal Affairs would send him many top-level resources. Lu Li should not wander around for a while, and he should cultivate at the Blue Cloud Peak for a couple of years. Once he became stronger and stabilized his position, he would be able to travel around. He could visit some mystic realms, stroll around some blessed lands, go to some ruins to comprehend, and so on. Top-level resources? Lu Li's eyes glowed. He took the initiative to ask, "Patriarch Hu, are there any elixirs for body refinement? I am cultivating the supreme divine body. If you can provide me with endless elixirs, my body will be improved quickly." "You are thinking too much," Patriarch Hu said with a bitter smile. "Divine Son is special, but the resources are limited. The most important thing is that you need a large number of elixirs for body refinement. Think about it. How many people are there in the Rakshasa Palace? Don't patriarchs need to cultivate their bodies? If you only need some, it is okay. I can ask for it for you. But if you want the Hall of Internal Affairs to provide you with endless elixirs, that is impossible. The path to the supreme divine body is too difficult, and it requires too many resources. Even a lord can't provide for it, let alone the Rakshasa Palace, unless the lord is the descendant of an emperor, and the emperor must still be alive." Seeing the sadness in Lu Li's eyes, Hubugue stood up, patted Lu Li's shoulder, and said, "I have a personal suggestion. Don't take this path. It is difficult. Even if your body is 100 times stronger and you can fight against the peak of the fourth tribulation, so what? There are countless warriors at the third heaven of the fifth tribulation. They can kill you easily. If you want your body to be 100 times stronger, you will need an enormous amount of elixirs. The Rakshasa Palace cannot afford it. What is more?" Chapter 2255. In addition to Hubugue, Lu Li heard from many others that they should give up on the path of the supreme immortal body. This road was too difficult to walk, and there was not a good future. Lu Li didn't pursue a distant future. All he wanted was to go to the Dragon Rebel Valley, meet Lu Ling, and finish the task for the demon. Dominating the third heaven and becoming an emperor were things that Lu Li never dared to think about. What was more? So what if he could become an emperor? Wasn't it just a matter of owning a large territory and obtaining more resources? He might as well go back to the second heaven and live a comfortable life. No promising future? How many years had Hubugue been cultivating? What realm had he cultivated to? He was just at the later stage of the fourth tribulation realm. Was cultivating fundamental principle really that powerful? I don't think so. Back at his own manor, Lu Li didn't step out. He cultivated all day long. He hadn't mastered the dragon manipulation skill yet. This was an incredible skill. If he could master it, his physical strength could be improved by 10 times in a short time. That would be very powerful. Also, this skill could improve his physical strength by 10 times. If his physical strength could be improved to the later stage of the fourth tribulation realm, his dragon manipulation skill could be improved by 10 times as well. 5 days later, the leader of the Division of Internal Affairs sent over all kinds of elixirs, including those for body cultivation, soul nourishment, divine energy, and even those for detoxification and healing. This immortal son is useful after all. Lu Li nodded to himself. At least, there were many resources. What's more, they were not given at one time, but at intervals. If he went out for missions, he could claim some special resources. Lu Li gave the leader of Internal Affairs all the elixirs for healing, detoxification, and divine energy, and asked him to exchange them for body-strengthening elixirs. Lu Li kept the soul-nourishing elixirs for himself. He didn't want to leave any time soon. He wanted to improve his physical strength first, and then master the dragon manipulation skill. After a while, when things settled down and nobody paid attention to him, he would figure out a way to remove the Black Heaven Talisman. As soon as the Black Heaven Talisman was removed, he would leave the Palace of Devils and the Sea of Devils. He would find a way to leave the Ziyang land and go to the chilly Winterland. Now, he understood that it would be difficult for him to go to the Dragon Rebel Valley on his own. He would have to rely on a powerful family. Yinxingxi's family should not be too weak. If he could ask for her family's help, the difficulty of going to the Dragon Rebel Valley should be reduced. Since Lu Li was in closed-door cultivation, nobody from the Palace of Rakshasa had come to him for the time being. He had established his authority in the Hall of Elders, and Hubugue had also secretly sent word to those people to calm down and not find trouble with Lu Li. Those young masters and young ladies naturally kept a low profile. Ever since Luo Fian came back, she hadn't seen Lu Li once, nor had she said anything. However, he didn't say anything. Instead, he expressed a certain attitude. Once was enough. Lu Li had proven something with his own strength. If he continued, Luo Fian would lose face, and she would get angry. There was a huge commotion in Luosha Palace. A new divine son had arrived, and he was the fierce person who had kidnapped Su Yuqin in the Underworld Palace. Furthermore, he had beaten up Zhang Yi in front of the Elders' Hall. How could such a big matter not attract attention? Not only the Palace of Rakshasa, but the entire Rakshasa Sea was talking about it. The Palace of Rakshasa had made public that Lu Li had become the holy son of the Palace of Rakshasa. Although the name Lu Li was unfamiliar, Lu Li's portrait had been circulated around. Mu Wanping, Cui Wushuang, and many other scouts had seen Lu Li. The news spread out, and the entire Rakshasa Sea knew about it. The Rakshasa Sea was in an uproar. If it were just an average chosen one, people would only pay attention to it. However, it was Lu Li. This was going to be interesting. Slap, slap, slap. Everyone at the Rakshasa Sea seemed to have heard a silent slap. The Palace of Rakshasa was slapping the Underworld Palace in the face. Lu Li used to be from the Underworld Palace. He made a scene in the Underworld Palace, took Meng Li hostage, killed 2 team leaders, captured Su Yuqin, and swaggered out of the Underworld Island. Lu Li was a disgrace to the Underworld Palace. He had become the holy son of the Palace of Rakshasa. If he were just an average disciple, it wouldn't matter. But the position of holy son corresponded to Su Yuqin. Su Yuqin killed a holy son of the Palace of Rakshasa, but was captured by another one. It seemed to be a tie. Actually, that was not the case. Lu Li had made too much of an impact this time. 8 patriarchs of the Hell Palace had died. Lu Li used to be a nobody, but he had disgraced the Palace of Hell. As long as Lu Li was alive, the Palace of Hell would be disgraced. If Lu Li could live freely, the Palace of Hell would never be able to hold their heads up high. Face was very important to large forces. When the divine son of the Rakshasa Palace was killed, they immediately mobilized their army to fight a bloody battle, resulting in countless casualties. Why? Wasn't just to save face? In the end, they did not win or lose, but at least they managed to save the reputation of the Devil Palace. If a large force lost its face and reputation, it would cause the martial artists under its banner to be a loss. It would also cause the other martial artists who wanted to join their force to shrink back. Does it matter who I follow? Why would they follow a force that couldn't even raise their heads in Devil Sea? In the long run, it was estimated that the Underworld Palace would continue to decline. Therefore, the people of Rakshasa Sea believed that the Underworld Palace would take action to restore the reputation of the Underworld Palace. A large-scale war would definitely not break out, because the Devil Palace and the Underworld Palace could not afford to fight. If the war went on, both sides would suffer, which would benefit the Pavilion of Heaven and the Mu family. There would be a series of assassinations. It would be perfect if Lu Li could be assassinated. As expected, half a month later, the Underworld Palace issued a statement. The Underworld Palace claimed that Lu Li was a traitor. The Devil Palace had taken in a traitor and appointed him as the Divine Son. This was the biggest provocation to the Underworld Palace. The Underworld Palace demanded that the Devil Palace hand Lu Li over, or they would have to face the consequences. This kind of statement was meaningless. The Devil Palace didn't even pay attention to it. They just sent out a notice to deal with the matter. The statement was nothing more than saying that Lu Li admired the Devil Palace and joined them willingly. The Palace Master didn't know about it, and he valued talents so much that he made an exception to promote Lu Li. The Palace Master also claimed that what happened to Lu Li had nothing to do with the Devil Palace. Now that Lu Li was the divine son of the Devil Palace, the Palace Master would defend Lu Li's dignity and hope that the Underworld Palace would not make a mistake. This kind of war of words was meaningless. Warriors of the Devil's Sea didn't mind. They were waiting to see what the Underworld Palace would do next and how the Devil Palace would fight back. As everyone expected, the Underworld Palace quickly took action. They sent out a few experts to form a few assassination squads and began to assassinate some of the Rakshasa Palace's hidden strongholds. In a single night, over a dozen strongholds under the Rakshasa Palace's control were reduced to ruins, with countless casualties. The Devil Palace was enraged. 5 days later, they launched a counterattack. Dozens of strongholds of the Underworld Palace were wiped out. They killed many people and launched a bloody counterattack. The two sides already had a big fight, and the anger was still simmering. What happened to Lu Li became the fuse. Peace would not be restored in a short time. Even though it wouldn't lead to a large-scale war, many people would be sacrificed due to the constant assassinations. Chapter 2256. The mission given to Lu Li by the Hall of Patriarchs was simple. He had to go into an earth fragment of the void to kill demons. There were many reasons for this mission. For example, Lu Li tamed a Phantom King. Though the Phantom King was underage, the fact that Lu Li could tame it was proof that he was good at dealing with demons. What was more, it was chaotic outside. The patriarchs had a discussion and decided that one patriarch would lead all the young masters and young ladies to go in and kill demons. During this period of time, there had been too many demons in the Void Shatterer, which had seriously threatened the safety of the troops stationed there. During this period of time, Devil Palace and the Underworld Palace were in a chaotic battle, so the Elder Hall could not send more experts to clear them out. They could only send the younger generation in. There were several benefits for the younger generation to go in. First, they could gain more fighting experience. Second, these young people did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. They liked to go out and mess around. If they were not put in a place, they could get into trouble. Third, Lu Li was the chosen one. He had to grow up with the young people, get to know them, and eventually become their closest comrades in arms. Therefore, by putting Lu Li with the young people, they could work together. There had to be one side that had to be convinced. Either Lu Li would lose his position as the chosen one, or Lu Li would defeat them completely. It was not Hu Bugui who came to assign the mission to Lu Li. It was an old master of the Hall of Internal Affairs, a good man. Chosen one, Chief Patriarch has given you instructions. The old master looked at Lu Li with a smile and said, "There will be many young people going in. Chief Patriarch hopes that you can live in harmony and not fight among yourselves. Especially, you cannot hurt others. If someone dies, no matter who it is, you will be held accountable." Got it, Lu Li answered casually, but he didn't say anything. Of course, he wouldn't go looking for trouble for no reason. He was afraid that those young masters and young ladies would be too young and aggressive to mess with him. That being said, Lu Li could tell from Chief Patriarch's words that he did not want anyone to die. As long as no one died, everything else was negotiable. That was the bottom line. Now that he had laid down the rules, Lu Li had nothing to worry about. Needless to say, the Phantom King and the Phantom Shadow were enough to make him invincible. If he used the mystical iron, it would be too easy for him to injure them, let alone kill them. And I cannot use the divine metal. Lu Li thought about it. He decided to find a way to consume that flying sword in a couple of days. That was a fragment of sovereign weapon, and it was quite powerful. The combination of the Spectre King's ghostly shadow flying sword could easily defeat an ordinary person. There were 3 days to go before the departure. Luli planned to do nothing during these 3 days, just to consume the flying sword. He locked himself in the side hall and took out the flying sword. The flying sword was shrouded in black mist, and there was not a trace of luster on it. It looked like it had been tarnished. Luli checked it for a while and poured divine energy into it. Nothing happened after a long time. He thought about it and took out the Nine Wonders Mountain. He used the flames of the Nine Wonders Mountain to burn it, wanting to refine the ghost energy on it. In the end, it was useless even after half a day. He tried to find a way to use other flames, but even after burning all kinds of flames, the evil aura did not disappear and continued to entangle the flying sword. If he didn't get rid of the black gas, he definitely wouldn't be able to refine this flying sword. All right, Luli suddenly realized something. Wasn't this black gas the ghost energy? Wasn't it because of the Spectre King that the sword became like this? Now, this Spectre King was his beast. The side hall was spacious. Luli took a look and let out the Spectre King. Then, he told Blood Fairy to let the Spectre King absorb the black gas on the flying sword. The Spectre King did not seem to understand Blood Fairy's words. However, when Luli handed over the flying sword and pointed at the black gas, the Spectre King seemed to have understood. The Spectre King reached out its claw and grabbed the flying sword. Then, the claw glowed in a dark light, and the black gas on the flying sword was absorbed. Good. Luli was cheered up to see that the flying sword was glowing again. The flying sword had become a relic weapon again. It would be easier to take control. What surprised Luli was that the flying sword was easy to take control. Meng Li's spiritual imprint was gone. Was it because Meng Li was dead? Or had she become an idiot? Or was it because the ghost energy had destroyed Meng Li's spiritual imprint? If the flying sword had someone else's spiritual imprint, then it would take a long time to take control. But this time it was easy. In merely 2 days, Luli had taken complete control of the sword. Buzzing, the flying sword glowed in green. At Luli's command, the flying sword danced around in the side hall. The speed was not fast because Luli was not familiar with it yet. Gradually, the flying sword moved faster and faster. Luli was getting more and more comfortable with the sword. In the end, he had to put the Spectre King back. The flying sword was flying at its top speed, and the side hall was too small. Luli was afraid that he might hurt the Spectre King. Good. It is a fragment of a sovereign weapon. Good. Luli nodded. Needless to say, he was satisfied with the speed and agility of the flying sword. Luli had experienced the sharpness of the sword. It could cut through his strong body easily. If he were to be attacked by the flying sword continuously, he would be reduced to a skeleton in the end. There was 1 day left. Luli didn't go out. He controlled the flying sword to fly around in the side hall. He even made it fly in different angles, trying to control the sword as if it was his own arm. Soon, the day passed. Jian Xiong, the escort leader, came in. Luli put away the flying sword and followed him. Seeing Jian Xiong following him, Luli asked with a frown, "You are coming as well?" Jian Xiong was only at the peak of the third tribulation. He would be a burden instead of a help. Luli had to take care of Jian Xiong on the off chance that those young masters were trying to set him up. Immortal's son. Jian Xiong was serious in speech and manner, but he was respectful. He cupped his fists and said, "The broken space we're going to call the Milky Way realm. The situation there is complicated. I can help you understand the situation there. Well, I will wait in the city. If you're going on a mission, I will not go out and add to your troubles." Jian Xiong was smart enough to know what Luli was thinking. Luli nodded. Jian Xiong added after some thoughts, "Immortal's son, do you want some maids to take care of you? I don't think I can come back anytime soon. I will have to stay there for a year and a half. The other young masters and young ladies will bring maids." Jian Xiong might be an escort leader, but he had been at the Palace of Rakshasa for many years. Otherwise, he wouldn't have become the escort leader of Luli. He knew the situation at the Palace of Rakshasa very well. The battle with the Hell Palace this time would probably take at least a year and a half for both sides to stop. The patriarchs wouldn't want the warriors to add to the troubles before the war ended. What was more, there were more demons in the Milky Way realm. It would take a long time to eliminate them. No, Chapter 2257. Lu Li arrived at the plaza in front of the Hall of Patriarchs with Jian Xiong and the twins. There was already a large group of people there, all young masters and young ladies with escorts and maids. There were no fourth tribulation escorts. After all, there were patriarchs leading the team and powerful warriors of the Milky Way realm. They weren't leaving the Rakshasa island, so Lu Li didn't have to worry about their safety. Lu Li's arrival caused quite a stir. Many people looked at him with jealousy, contempt, disdain, hatred, and a touch of killing intent. If Lu Li had some background, they wouldn't have shown it so obviously. Lu Li used to be a small commander of the Hell Palace. For these young masters and young ladies, he was a lowly nobody. He was lucky enough to be appreciated by the master, and he had become a phoenix. Lu Li glanced over calmly. He noticed two more fourth tribulation young masters. Clearly, those that provoked him the other day were only part of the group. Two more young masters hadn't shown up yet. One of them was handsome and had a smile on his face. There was no hatred or jealousy in his eyes, only calmness. Lu Li was more afraid of this man. Only dogs that didn't bark like to bite. The other one was tall and strong like a man with exaggerated muscles. His eyes were squinting, but he gave Lu Li the feeling that he was a viper. This man is not simple either. He was rough on the outside, but gentle on the inside. This kind of man was dangerous. Lu Li was about to send a message to Jian Xiong when he received one. That white-faced young master is Hu Qianjun, the great-grandson of Patriarch Hu. That big guy is Ning Ao, the great-grandson of great Patriarch Ning Yuan. These two, Tan Long, Little Pepper, and Yuan Lingyun are the best of the young generation of the Rakshasa Palace. Well, Yuan Lingyun is not here yet. Lu Li was confident now. He stood on the side and waited quietly. He didn't talk to anyone. He closed his eyes and ignored the looks from the others. Rustle, rustle, rustle. After a while, he heard some footsteps. Lu Li noticed that everyone was looking at the west. He looked over and his eyes glowed. He thought to himself, what a beautiful lady. The lady was wearing a yellow dress with a white cloak on her back. She had a beautiful face and a slim figure. She had a slim waist and voluptuous breasts. She was one of the most beautiful. In fact, the little chili pepper Lu Qianqian was not bad looking, but her temperament was a notch lower compared to this person. She gave Lu Li the feeling that she was like a lotus, quietly blooming in the water, gentle as jade. There was a faint smile on her face that made people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. Upon closer inspection, he felt that he was 1,000 miles away. The feeling of wanting to get close, but not daring to do so made one's heart itch. A soul expert. He quickly came to a realization. He glanced at the woman's eyes and found that there seemed to be a vast painting in her eyes. He couldn't help but want to flip through it and explore it. A woman who cultivates the soul does indeed have an aura. Lu Li nodded. Needless to say, she must be Yuan Lingyun. He noticed that Tan Long, Ning Ao, and Hu Qianjun were obsessed with her. If she were an average young lady, they would be filled with possessiveness. It was not easy for them to get their hands on this woman. She could only be a woman of equal status to them. Sister Lingyun. Chili Pepper was a hot girl. She rushed over with a sweet smile and took Yuan Lingyun's hand. The two of them, one red and one yellow, were very attractive. The other young ladies were overshadowed by them. Lu Li observed secretly. There was no jealousy in the eyes of the other young ladies. Instead, they were full of worship and admiration. Lu Li thought more highly of Yuan Lingyun. Young ladies would compare themselves with each other and be jealous. This Yuan Lingyun must have some tricks up her sleeves. She had completely subdued all the young ladies of the Azura Palace. Yuan Lingyun chatted with Chili Pepper for a bit. Then she walked over slowly and exchanged greetings with Tan Long and the others. Her voice was pleasant and soft. As soon as she arrived, she became the center of attention. Impressive. This lady was a social butterfly. She was skillful with her words. She took care of everyone's feelings with just a few words. Even though she didn't greet everyone, she made them feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. After a few more words, Yuan Lingyun looked at Lu Li. She put on a gentle smile and looked at Lu Li from afar, as if she was waiting for Lu Li to greet her. Lu Li didn't move. It was not that he was not interested in beauties. He just didn't have the courage to be. He might be the chosen one now, but he had a strong sense of danger. What was more, he didn't want to stay at the Azura Palace for the rest of his life. He only saw it as a shelter. Once he cracked the Black Heaven talisman, he would find a way to leave. This woman was too powerful. It was better for him not to take the initiative to provoke her. Therefore, he pretended to be cold and aloof, completely ignoring Yuan Lingyun. Ha. Seeing that Lu Li ignored her, Yuan Lingyun walked over with a smile. Under everyone's gaze, she bowed and said, "Greetings, God's son." What? There was an uproar. Yuan Lingyun was showing goodwill to Lu Li. Tan Long, Ning Ao, and the others were upset. Even Hu Qianjuan's smile froze. Chili Pepper pouted. Lu Li's heart turned cold when he sensed the hostility in the eyes of so many young masters. It seemed that Yuan Lingyun was showing goodwill to him, but she was harboring evil intentions. She was trying to push him to the opposite side of the young masters. Lu Li didn't show much enthusiasm. He just nodded and said, "Lady Yuan, you are too kind." Lu Li's indifference didn't embarrass Yuan Lingyun. She didn't seem to be displeased. She turned around with a sweet smile and chatted with Chili Pepper. Lu Li looked over to Ning Ao and Hu Qianjun. Hu Qianjun put on a smile, and Ning Ao squinted again. Only Tan Long was still glaring at him with killing intent. Yuan Lingyun, Ning Ao, Hu Qianjun. Lu Li remembered the three secretly. The Azura Palace was full of talents. Not all the young ones were good-for-nothings. The three were the best of the young generation. Not only were they powerful, but they were also shrewd and resourceful. If nothing went wrong, in hundreds or thousands of years, the three would all be in high positions. If it were not for me, the Azura Palace would have set up the position of goddess, and Yuan Lingyun would have taken it. Lu Li thought to himself. Not only was Yuan Lingyun beautiful, she was excellent in all aspects. She was much better than Su Yueqin. What is the background of this Yuan Lingyun? Lu Li asked Jian Xiong with curiosity. The latter's answer surprised Lu Li. Jian Xiong replied, "She doesn't have a powerful background. Her third grandpa is just a regular patriarch. She comes from humble background. Her father is not favored in the family, and her mother is a maid. But she is very capable and is liked by the patriarchs. She became the last apprentice of the chief patriarch the year before last. She really is an amazing girl." Lu Li was even more afraid of Yuan Lingyun. She was just the daughter of a maid, and she had become the best of the young generation at the Azura Palace. This Yuan Lingyun was not simple. Chapter 2258. The Milky Way realm was a relatively famous void fragment in the Rakshasa Sea because there were several very precious resources here. This place once caused a bloody war between the four forces. In the end, the Palace of Luo conquered this place. They built many powerful runes to seal off all the exits. The only way to enter was from inside the Devil Island. Not only were there many elixirs here, but there was also a strange kind of crystal, which was a rare material for forging artifacts. Any powerful relic weapon would need this kind of crystal. Each crystal could be sold at a high price. It was said that rare crystals were required to forge treasures, imperial weapons, and holy weapons. These crystals could be sold at a high price. Of course, there were not many of them here. Otherwise, the other three forces would try their best to occupy this broken void. Places with treasures were often accompanied by dangers. There are many demons and monsters in the realm of Milky, and there were quite a number of horrifying ones as well. Of course, the powerful ones had been eliminated by the powerful warriors of the Palace of Luo. Most of the demons were of middle and low levels. On top of a fiery red cliff stood a small city. This small city was enveloped by a red barrier. The entire city was sprinkled with a red radiance, making it look particularly evil. Lu Li and the others had been here for 2 days. He was given a small castle. He moved in with Jian Xiong and asked about the realm of Milky as soon as he went in. His divine telekinesis had also scouted the surrounding situation and discovered that there was an extremely long abyss canyon outside the city. He could not see the bottom of it, and below it were rolling red clouds that seemed to be constantly burning with raging flames. Divine Sun, those are flames. We call that canyon the Milky Way because this deep canyon runs through the entire Milky Way realm. If you look at it from above, it looks like a long river of flames. That's how the Milky Way realm got its name. Jin Xiong had been here before, so he knew the situation well. He led Lu Li to the balcony of the castle and pointed to the fiery red river in the distance. The demons here are mainly in the Milky River. Almost all the treasures here are in the Milky River. The most valuable treasure here, Heaven Flame Essence, is ejected from the bottom of the Milky River. The city was built here because the Heaven Flame Essence here is the most abundant and frequent. Every year, we can eject more than 10 pieces of Heaven Flame Essence. More than 10? Lu Li touched his nose in embarrassment. Only a dozen pieces of Heaven Flame Essence? They actually built a city just for this? Seeing that Lu Li didn't take it seriously, Jin Xiong explained with a forced smile, Divine Sun, one piece of Heaven Flame Essence can be sold for 10 billion Divine Stones. That is a top-level material. Lu Li was stunned. This place could produce more than 10 Heaven Essence every year, which would be more than 100 billion Divine Stones. No wonder the Palace of Rakshasa valued this place so much. Tell me about the evil beasts. Lu Li didn't care about the treasures. Every force had a strict system. The treasures here could not be pocketed. Take, for example, the spirit world's godly medicines. All the godly medicines that had not matured would be marked, and it would be impossible for anyone to take them for themselves. Jin Xiong pointed at the Milky Way in the distance and said, The evil devils are mainly in the Milky Way. This Milky Way is very strange. It can nurture the divine item, the heavenly flame essence, and also nurture many strange evil devils. The most common ones are fire fairies. They are balls of fire with high temperature, but they are easy to kill. When the soul core of the fire fairies is found, the fire fairies will become regular flames. There are 3 more advanced ones. The first one is the fire beasts. They are as hard as iron, fast as the wind, and strong in defense. Their attacks are not as strong, but there are many of them. Usually, there will be thousands of them. If you're not at the peak of the third tribulation realm, you will be in danger. The second one is the fire ants. They are small in size, but fast. Their numbers cannot be described with numbers. One time, there will be more than 1 million of them. Fire ants are the most annoying because they can spit out poison that is corrosive. The best way to deal with fire ants is to use soul attacks. Fire ants have weak souls. The last one is the most powerful evil devil here. They are called Lord of Ghostfire. Average warriors will die if they encounter Lord of Ghostfire. Even warriors at the 4th tribulation realm cannot survive. But decades ago, our master went down to the Milky Way with several great patriarchs. They killed almost all the Lord of Ghostfire. Over the years, we have not seen a large number of Lord of Ghostfire. You don't have to worry, deity. After Jin Xiong's explanation, Lu Li knew what to do. Their mission here was to kill fire fairies, fire beasts, and fire ants. The Milky Way could give birth to endless evil devils. Too many of them could threaten the safety of the city. Also, warriors in the city would go out to collect elixirs and search for heaven essence every once in a while. Evil devils and fire essences were everywhere outside. It would be troublesome for warriors to go out. Usually, patriarchs would lead teams of warriors at the peak of the 3rd tribulation realm to do this. However, during this time, the patriarchs were busy defending against attacks from the Underworld Palace and assassinating the strongholds of the Underworld Palace. In addition, the patriarchs wanted to throw these young people in, which was why Lu Li was here. This time, there were more than 40 young masters and young ladies. All of them were at high realms. The lowest among them was at the later stage of the 3rd tribulation realm. There were 5 warriors at the 4th tribulation realm, and most of them were at the peak of the 3rd tribulation realm. What was more, they all had some secret treasures to protect themselves. It was not a problem for them to kill some evil devils and beasts. There were more than 10,000 warriors in the city. There were 5 patriarchs guarding the city and 1 patriarch leading the team. Basically, there wouldn't be any problems in the Milky Way realm. The patriarch leading the team was surnamed Sure. He was at the middle stage of the 4th tribulation realm. As long as they didn't run into a large group of Ghost Fire Kings, they would be safe. Patriarch Sure told Lu Li and the others to rest for 3 days. 3 days later, he would lead the team out to kill the evil devils and beasts. After the young masters and young ladies settled down, they gathered together to organize a banquet. They were all young and vigorous. They could not sit still, or rather, they were restless. Those people didn't invite Lu Li to the banquet. Even if they did, Lu Li wouldn't go. Lu Li maintained his aloof attitude. He didn't want to mingle with these people. He just wanted to crack the Black Heaven Talisman and leave the palace of Rakshasa. Jianxiong should know something about the Black Heaven Talisman, but Lu Li didn't dare to ask. Who knew if Jianxiong would report it to Luo Fian? Once he did, Lu Li would suffer a miserable death. 3 days later, Lu Li walked out of the castle on time. More than half of the young masters and young ladies had gathered outside. They were all in high spirits and excitement. Pepper and Yuan Lingyun hadn't arrived yet. The young masters were looking around, waiting for Lu Li and Lu Li to show up. Lu Li walked to the side of the group and stood in the corner. Many people looked at him. However, no one bowed to him. Even though Lu Li had been appointed as the chosen one and had defeated Zhang Yi, no one was completely convinced by him. Russell, Ning Ao, Hu Qianjun, Yuan Lingyun, Tan Long, and Pepper walked out. The young masters and young ladies gathered around them. The 5 of them walked over like stars surrounding the moon. The 5 glanced at Lu Li. Hu Qianjun was smiling. Ning Ao was expressionless. Tenlong's eyes were cold. Lu Qianqian was pouting, and Yuan Lingyun was smiling sweetly. They all had different expressions, but Lu Li believed that all of them wished for him to die. Maybe it was because Lu Li didn't show much enthusiasm last time. Yuan Lingyun didn't come over to salute. She just nodded from afar. Her eyes were glowing, which made Lu Li exclaim at her charm. Let's go. Chapter 2259. All the young masters and young ladies were on their own. They didn't bring any escorts with them. They were well aware that they were going out to gain experience. If they were to go out with escorts and leave the chores to the escorts, then what were they doing here? Naturally, the demons and beasts around the city had been cleared. This time, they were moving along the river to the north. They were not traveling fast. Patriarch Sure led the way and the others followed behind. Tan Long, Hu Qianjun, and Ning Ao were behind Patriarch Sure. Yuan Lingyun and Lu Qianqian were in the second row. The others followed behind, not daring to overtake them. Lu Li was at the back, more than 30 feet away from the others. He seemed to be out of place. The others didn't want to talk to Lu Li, and Lu Li didn't want to talk to them either. That patriarch sure didn't seem to notice Lu Li and the others. They were flying along the river. They didn't fly high. An hour later, the flames in the river suddenly swelled up. Then, the flames separated and swept toward Lu Li and the others. Fire sprites. Lu Li raised his eyebrows. He took a look. The young masters and young ladies didn't panic at all. Patriarch Sure even took a detour to make way for the flames to reach them. The flames were dark red. The blossoms looked like lotus lanterns. Lu Li used psychic power to check. They were just blossoms of flames. Something seemed to be different. However, he couldn't find anything special about them. Whoosh whoosh. Tan Long, Ning Ao, and Hu Qianjun dashed over. They took out their weapons and attacked at the blossoms of flames. Lu Li noticed that their attacks were strange. No matter what weapons they were using, they were all focused on one point. Bang, bang, bang. The blossoms of flames spread out. The fire sprites were killed. The 3 of them were brave, and the fire sprites could not get close. The 3 of them were unstoppable. They dashed into the clouds of flames and killed the fire sprites one by one. Yuan Lingyun and the others took action as well. They must have been here before. They could find the soul cores of the fire sprites and kill them one by one. Lu Li closed his eyes and used the trace of Tao to sense. He could tell from where they were attacking and found the soul core of Fire Goblin easily. The Fire Enchantress looked like a ball of flame, but there were some flames with high density and some with low density. There was a point where the density was extremely high and the color was slightly darker. That was where the soul core was located. A fiery cloud floated over. It was unknown how many fire demon spirits there were. Elders sure stood at the side and did not make a move, waiting for everyone to clear them out. This time, Patriarch Sure was here to assume command. The main force of the purge was Lu Li and the others. The fire cloud floated over. Inevitably, Lu Li was hit by it. Before the flames could even get close, a terrifyingly high temperature swept over. That being said, the flames were not particularly horrifying. Lu Li could stand it with his physical strength. This God's Son robe is not bad. Lu Li noticed that the Son of God's robe lit up automatically. He felt the high temperature was gone. Instead, he felt cool and comfortable. Lu Li looked at the other young masters and young ladies. Their robes and dresses all had glistening divine patterns. Clearly, they were treasures. The temperature could not destroy their robes. Of course, they were all young masters and young ladies from prestigious families. If their clothes were burned, how could they face others in the future? Buzzing, Lu Li took out the cauldron of 1,000 transformations, which transformed into a spear. He shook his arm, and the spear moved in a blur, hitting at the soul cores of the fire elves. Lu Li's attacks were casual. It was as if he were waving a cattail leaf fan and swatting mosquitoes to death. As a matter of fact, it was not difficult to kill the fire elves. The difficult part was to find the soul cores and shatter them. Lu Li could find the soul cores accurately by using the trace of Tao. Therefore, it was easy for him to kill the fire elves. The dozens of young masters and young ladies were fighting on their own. Some of them had it easy while others had some difficulties. They would check Lu Li with psychic power every now and then. They were all surprised to see that he was doing it so easily. There were dozens of people here. Not many of them saw the fight between Lu Li and Zhang Yi that day. The others didn't know much about Lu Li's abilities. To some extent, they despised Lu Li. Inevitably, they were surprised to see that Lu Li was so relaxed. There were many fire elves floating over. That being said, fire elves were demons of the lowest level. Killing them was not difficult. An hour later, tens of thousands of fire elves were killed. None of them were seriously injured. Only a few were slightly injured. They recovered after taking some healing pellets. Moving on, this time, they were not here for fun. They were going to stay here for a long time to kill most of the demons and beasts to ensure the peace of the realm of Milky. 2 hours later, they ran into another group of fire elves. For the first time, there were fire beasts. Fortunately, there were not many of them, only hundreds. The fire beasts looked like leopards. They were black and red in color with thin scales. They had long claws and sharp spikes on their backs. They had 4 long fangs in their mouths. Their eyes were the strangest because they had no pupils. They only had 2 dark eyeballs as if they were blind. Roar, roar, one after another, the fire beasts whooshed over and pounced at them as fast as the wind. A sky full of fire fairies floated over. This time, Patriarch Sure didn't leave. Instead, he flew up to the sky, ready to help at any time. Tan Long, Ning Ao, and Hu Qianjun didn't change their expressions. They ignored the fire elves and dashed toward the fire beasts. Yuan Lingyun, Lu Qianqian, and the other young masters and young ladies did the same. The more than a dozen of them seemed to be in a panic. Clearly, they didn't have much fighting experience, and their abilities were not good enough. Roar, roar, a fire beast dashed toward Lu Li. After a blur, the fire beast was already in front of Lu Li. He put away the 1,000 transformations cauldron and punched at the fire beast. Bang! With a muffled sound, Lu Li felt his arm was numb. The fire beast was smashed away, but it rolled over on the ground. Then, it continued to charge forward as if nothing had happened. It really is strong in defense. Lu Li nodded. He took out his flying sword after some thoughts and dashed toward the Inferno beast in a blur. With a flash, the flying sword pierced into the Inferno beast's eyeball and stirred it up. The inferno beast howled in pain and was killed easily. Boom, boom, boom. Ning Ao and the others all took out their secret treasures. Ning Ao took out a white bone rod. Every time he smashed it, a fire beast would be either killed or wounded. Hu Qianjun took out a pagoda. Every time he smashed it, a fire beast would be smashed into pieces. Tan Long took out a small chariot and smashed on as well. Yuan Lingyun had a willow twig in her hand. Every time she waved it, a fire beast would be cut in half. Chili Pepper took out a jade Rui scepter, which was powerful. They're all disciples of rich families. They really have many treasures. Luli glanced over. Almost all the young masters and young ladies had treasures to protect themselves. Even the lowest one was as good as Qinzhan's tower of immortal demon. But on second thought, these young masters and young ladies were all from rich families. At least there was a patriarch in their families. They were the best of the younger generation. It was understandable that they were given treasures. Chapter 2260. The hundreds of fire beasts seemed to be ferocious. However, they were suppressed soon after the warriors used their secret treasures. Patriarch Shur made 3 moves. Twice it was because 2 young ladies couldn't stand it anymore. The third time was when a young master was almost killed by a fire beast. If it wasn't a life and death crisis, Elder Shur wouldn't make a move. Since this group of people was here to gain experience, what was the point if they didn't experience danger and face a life and death crisis? Of course, the young masters and young ladies all knew that Patriarch Shur was watching from above. They were sure of one thing. They wouldn't die, and Patriarch Shur would save them. In that case, their potential wouldn't be forced out, and they wouldn't be in a life and death crisis. Therefore, there was a difference between the abilities of the young masters and young ladies and Lu Li, a warrior who rose from the grassroots. They all had someone to rely on. Lu Li didn't. He had to rely on himself. But there was no other way. The elders of the young masters and young ladies were afraid that something might happen to them. Fighting experience could be accumulated over time. If they died, there would be nothing left. Many people were wounded this time. Even though everyone had secret treasures, some young masters and young ladies didn't have enough fighting experience. The fire beasts were too fast, and their reactions were too quick. It was normal that some people were wounded. After the fire beasts were killed, the rest of the fire fairies were easy to deal with. For these warriors, fire fairies were nothing. The wounded went to tend to their wounds. The others attacked quickly and cleared out all the fire fairies. Then it was time to clean up the battlefield. Patriarch Shur told several young masters to pack up all the bodies of the fire beasts. The bodies were miraculous materials. Their muscles contained powerful energy that could be used to make pellets. Usually, the young masters wouldn't take care of the bodies. But since Patriarch Shur said so, they had to do so. Patriarch Shur told them to rest and tend to their wounds. Luli sat on a rock with his legs crossed. For him, he didn't need to rest in a fight of this level. But since the others were cultivating and tending to their wounds, he had to follow their advice. Luli sat on the side by himself. Everyone else was gathered around him, and Luli seemed out of place. Luli was so cold that the others didn't want to be snubbed. What was more, they were on the same side. Luli beating up Zhang Yi was equal to beating them. Why would they take the initiative to befriend Luli? Patriarch Shur was well aware of this situation, but he wouldn't say anything. If Luli wanted to reconcile with a group of young masters and young ladies, words wouldn't work. Persuasion from others wouldn't work either. Only when they went through some things together, through thick and thin, could they become real friends, comrades in arms, brothers and sisters. After resting for half a day, the group continued to advance. In the next 3 days, they continuously encountered fire immortal spirits and flame beasts. However, with Elder Shur leading them, and the group all had their own unique treasures, killing them was not too difficult. Moreover, in the following battles, the combat strength of the group of young masters and young mistresses had clearly increased. At the very least, they did not panic when facing the flame beasts. They did not panic too much. This way, They would not be too afraid and would not make obvious mistakes in battle. In all the battles, Luli was playing by himself. He didn't care about the others at all. Even if someone was in danger nearby, he wouldn't even look. Patriarch sure was. Feigned. Patriarch sure, who were. Not to say, were not either. Weren't. And young masters. They there? And they were. King sure of Tion of. Under. Patriarch sure, since he, who were. Who were at. If so, why did Luli have to do something unnecessary? He was the divine son. A group of people ignored him when they saw him, and everyone was hostile toward him. How could he help them? It was nightfall again, but since they were by the Milky Way, and there were always fires in the Milky Way, it was only a bit darker than during the day. Everyone had their own interspatial artifacts. When Patriarch Shur gave the order to rest, they all took out their own interspatial artifacts and went to rest. Patriarch Shur sat on the side, keeping his guard up. Luli didn't go into the interspatial artifact. He didn't want to expose the mountain. The wicked bead was too weak. It could be destroyed in an instant. If so, he might as well sit where he was. It would be easier for him to be alerted in case of danger. He sat cross-legged under a barren tree. The trees here were all fiery red, and he leaned against the tree. He was not very far from the campsite, only about 5 kilometers away. Elder Shur's spiritual force could easily cover a radius of 10,000 kilometers, so there was no such thing as an unsafe place. After a while, he heard some noises coming from the campsite. After 3 days of hard work, it was a rare chance for them to relax. The young masters and young ladies took a bath and rested for a while. Then, they held a bonfire party. Their interspatial rings were filled with good food and wine. It was quite an experience to sit around the bonfire. Luli could smell food. There was barbecued meat. He was at peace. He calmed down and focused on learning the dragon-absorbing skill. 2 hours had passed. The noises did not die down. Instead, it was getting louder. Someone must be drunk and making a lot of noise. Luli's eyelashes twitched. He was not woken up by the noise. He sensed someone was approaching. Someone was walking toward him. He did not open his eyes. His nose twitched, and he frowned. The person had a fragrance. Luli had smelled it before. Therefore, he knew who it was without checking. There was no emotion on his face, only a slight frown. The person walked over slowly and didn't say anything after she got close to Luli. Instead, she walked to Luli's side and leaned against the tree. She actually sat on the ground like Luli. Whoosh! That person waved her hand, and a jug of wine flew over. Luli caught it with one hand. He did not understand what she was trying to do. He opened his eyes, thought about it, and said, "Lady Lingyun, you shouldn't be here." The one who came was Yuan Lingyun. She seemed to have drunk a lot. Her pretty face was flushed, and her eyes were a little blurry. She held another wine jar and raised her head to take a sip. The wine overflowed from her chin and wet the clothes in front of her chest. "Ha ha!" Yuan Lingyun giggled after she took a sip. She murmured to herself, "God's son, why do you care so much about how others look at you? You are mediocre if you're not envied. Since you are the God's son, you must not be mediocre, right?" Luli answered indifferently, "I'm not afraid of being envied, but I don't want to be used. I don't want trouble." "Ha! Ha ha!" Yuan Lingyun laughed. She squinted her eyes like a fox. She grinned and said, "Trouble? God's son, you being in this position means endless trouble in itself. What is more, living in this world, unless you are willing to be mediocre, where else can there be no trouble?" Chapter 2261. Everyone would have a clear purpose in their actions. They would not do something without a reason, unless that person was out of his mind. Yuan Lingyun was not out of her mind. She was an extremely intelligent girl. Such a person naturally had her own reasons for doing things, and naturally had her own demands. She was the most likely candidate for the position of goddess. Luli had taken her place. Even if she was not filled with hatred and hostility, she would not try to be friendly to Luli again and again. Luli was the chosen one, but he had no power. He could not compete with the patriarchs. Yuan Lingyun was not the kind of girl who would lose her mind whenever she saw a man. She was always surrounded by a group of outstanding men. She might not be immune to men, but at least she would not let go of her modesty and flirt with them. If so, why would Yuan Lingyun take the initiative to flirt with Lu Li again and again? She even did something as indecent as wetting her clothes with wine. She must have a purpose. What did Yuan Lingyun want about Lu Li? Only the chosen one. Yuan Lingyun came from a humble background. She had made it this far by relying on her hard work and ambition. She was liked by the patriarchs and was accepted as a protege by the chief patriarch. She must have great ambitions. Maybe she wanted to be like Luo Fian. The position of the Son of God was the most important step for Yuan Lingyun to become a carp leaping through the Dragon's Gate. Once she got it, she would be on equal footing with Su Yuaqin and would become one of the most dazzling pearls in the entire Devil Sea. If Tan Long and Ning Ao got the position, she might give it up. But Lu Li, an outsider, came out of nowhere, which gave her some ideas. That was why she did what she did tonight. Lu Li had been through too much. He was not good at scheming, but he had seen through many things. Any scheme would eventually lead to the end. It was easy to tell what Yuan Lingyun was thinking when she saw through her desire. Hearing Lu Li's words, Yuan Lingyun's jar of wine trembled. Her blush became more vivid. She closed her eyes, and her chest was heaving. Clearly, Lu Li's words had struck her heart, and she was flustered. However, she recovered very quickly. In just a moment, a faint smile appeared on the corner of her lips again. She turned her head slightly and said, "Divine Son, is what you said true? Since you don't want to sit on this seat, why did you sit on it?" "I don't want to tell you the reason," Lu Li said indifferently. He would not tell Yuan Lingyun that he was implanted with the mysterious heaven talisman and was forced to join the Luo Sha Palace. He pondered for a moment before revealing an evil smile. "Miss Lingyun, if you want the position of the deity, as long as you have a good idea, I will cooperate with you anytime. However, I have one condition." "Conditions?" Yuan Lingyun was startled. She opened her eyes and asked, "What conditions?" "One night." Lu Li grinned and said, "Stay with me for one night. Just one night." "What do you say?" Yuan Lingyun's pretty face turned cold. She could not suppress the killing intent in her eyes. Virginity was very important to her. If she were not a virgin, she would lose the halo of holiness, and she would not be a goddess sought after by many young masters. How could Lu Li want that? She trembled and closed her eyes again. She seemed to be struggling inside, wondering which was more important, the position of the deity or her virginity. Lu Li was intrigued. The only appreciation he had for Yuan Lingyun was gone. He was disappointed that this girl would struggle with this. Once a girl lost her self-respect and tried to gain benefits with her body, she would lose her dignity and heart. In the end, her achievements would be limited. Yuan Lingyun thought about it for the time, for more than a dozen breaths. Finally, she made up her mind and said, "Can you change the condition?" "Ha ha." Lu Li put on a mocking smile. He laughed and said, "I'm just kidding. I'm not interested in your body. Like you said before, you go and find a way. If it is feasible, I will cooperate with you. I don't want the position of deity. But I have to remind you that Master is not so easy to fool. Don't do anything without a good plan. Well, don't play tricks on me. I don't want to be your enemy." Yuan Lingyun's cheeks were burning. She felt shy, as if she was being toyed with by Lu Li. But soon she put it down. She stood up and walked toward the base camp. After a few steps, she looked back at Lu Li. She was taken aback when she saw the meaningful smile on Lu Li's face. For the first time, she was afraid of Lu Li. It was as if she had become a naked, weak girl in front of Lu Li, unable to hide any secrets. She could not resist and was at his mercy. "Ha ha." Lu Li smiled. He closed his eyes and went back to cultivation. Presumably, after today, Yuan Lingyun wouldn't dare to use crafty plots against him anymore, right? As for giving up the position of deity, Lu Li didn't mind. If he was no longer the deity, fewer people would pay attention to him. It would be easier for him to crack the mysterious heaven talisman and leave. However, Lu Li didn't think Yuan Lingyun had the ability. To remove him from the deity's position, Luo Fian must agree. Luo Fian had just accepted Lu Li as the deity's position. How could he remove it in a short time? Wouldn't that be like slapping himself in the face? Luo Fian was a man of his own mind since he had conquered the palace of Rakshasa all by himself and defeated a group of old demons. Not even the three great patriarchs could change Luo Fian's mind, unless Lu Li did something to humiliate the palace of Rakshasa. Lu Li was not that stupid. If he did something like that, he would anger Luo Fian and he would lose his life. Lu Li continued to cultivate. He had been studying the dragon skill for a long time, but he still could not make the last step. This was a headache for him. He didn't want to be stuck in this bottleneck for dozens or hundreds of years. That would be depressing. It was a quiet night. The next day, they moved on. This time, they would be out for at least a month or two. There were too many demons and beasts. They had to kill most of them, if not all of them. For a period of time after that, it was the same as before. Patriarchshire led the team and the others. They also ran into fire ants, but Patriarchshire killed most of them in person. The rest were dealt with by the others. They were said to be on a mission, but in fact, it was training. With Patriarchshire in command, the worst that could happen to them was injuries. Nobody died. Lu Li had been playing with his flying sword. After a while, he felt that the flying sword was like an extension of his body. It was getting more and more flexible and smooth in his hands. The relationship between those people and Lu Li never eased up. There was a clear division between them. Lu Li wandered around the periphery by himself, looking out of place. Patriarchshire was helpless in this situation. He didn't bother to mediate either. As long as the two sides didn't fight, he didn't care about the rest. On the 18th day, the peace was finally broken. Lu Li and the others were unlucky. They ran into a king of Ghostfire. Chapter 2262. They all ran away. They knew that they were not powerful enough, and they would all die if they were to face the master of Ghostfire. They would only be a burden to Patriarchshire if they stayed. Lu Li didn't stay either. He took a quick look at the master of Ghostfire and ran away. A cold chi and energy spread out from the Milky Way in the distance. A white flame flew out from the Milky Way. Even though it was just a flame, it was cold. One had to admit that the master of Ghostfire was strange. The master of Ghostfire was not a flame, but a human-shaped monster. He looked like a dwarf, and his body was translucent. When he appeared, there were fire clouds around him. Therefore, people thought that the master of Ghostfire was just a ball of flame. The master of Ghostfire was hiding in the white flame with a diameter of more than 2 miles. The master of Ghostfire was small in size. If it were not for the fact that Lu Li had the trace of Tao, he wouldn't have been able to see the master of Ghostfire. The master of Ghostfire was good at hiding. He could disappear and disappear in the Ghostfire. The Ghostfire itself was a powerful flame. What was more horrifying was the master of Ghostfire's attacks. Whoosh, whoosh, the young masters and young ladies didn't dare to look at the master of Ghostfire for long. They ran away. The master of Ghostfire was so famous that they didn't have the courage to fight him. They ran for more than 30,000 miles. They were relieved to see that the master of Ghostfire didn't catch up with them. Ning Ao ordered them to rest on the spot and wait for Patriarchshire to come back. To this group of people, Eldershire was their backbone. Without Eldershire, this group of people would feel that they had lost their direction and goal. The Milky Way realm was not particularly dangerous because many masters of Ghostfire had been eliminated. It was hard to run into them. That being said, the Great Fire was used to following Patriarchshire around. None of them dared to move. Lu Li said nothing. He stood on the side like an insignificant character. On the other side, a group of people gathered together to discuss the Ghostfire King. They were discussing whether Eldershire would be able to withstand it. If not, what should they do next? Should they go back or move on? Most of them had a clear idea. If Patriarchshire could not survive, they would go back to the Milky Way city at once. Without a patriarch, they were afraid of death. More than half of them would die if they ran into a master of Ghostfire. Lu Li listened for a while and decided to cultivate. It was pointless to say anything now. He had to see if Patriarchshire could come back. If it was a group of will-o-wisps, Eldershire would definitely not be able to return. Now that there was only one Ghostfire King, there was still a chance for it to return. After all, Eldershire's combat power was not bad. He waited for 6 hours. Li's heart sank. If he didn't come back in 6 hours, then he might never come back. In such a long time, he had either killed the will-o'-wisp and returned, or he had escaped from the will-o'-wisp. Not seeing anyone for such a long time meant that they had most likely died in battle. The people on the other side began to panic. After all, it was a long distance from here to Tiana City. It would take more than 20 days. Although the demons on the way here had been eliminated, who knew if there would be demons at the bottom of the Tiana River? Luli didn't mind. He just waited. Even if Patriarchshire died, he wouldn't be affected. Another 6 hours passed, and the people on the other side were no longer calm. A few young ladies were so nervous that their bodies were trembling. A few young ladies surrounded Yuan Lingyun, while a group of young masters surrounded Ning Ao and Tan Long. Now everyone was silent, waiting for the strongest young masters to make a decision. Let's wait for another day. Ning Ao waved his hand and said, let's take turns to rest and build up our strength. If Patriarchshire doesn't come back, we will go back to the Tiana City. The others nodded. Ning Ao stepped forward, and they all regarded Ning Ao as their leader. As a matter of fact, Luli was the one with the highest status here. After all, he was the chosen one. However, everyone automatically ignored Luli. No one asked for his opinion. Chosen one. A gentle voice came to Li's mind. Yuan Lingyun was talking to Luli. Chosen one, can Patriarchshire come back? If not, what should we do? Luli didn't even open his eyes. After a while, he replied, I don't think so. What else can we do? We have to go back. Let's do as Ning Ao said and go back to the Tiana City in one day. Okay, Yuan Lingyun added after some thoughts. If there's an emergency, chosen one, can you please take care of us since you are so strong? After all, we are from the same sect. Uh-huh. Luli smiled lightly, but didn't say anything. Yuan Lingyun's request made him speechless. From the same sect? Did these people treat him as one of their own? Not only did they not treat him as one of their own, but they were also hostile. They might stab him in the back when they had the chance. Why should he help them when they were in danger? Luli didn't reply. Yuan Lingyun was disappointed, but she didn't say anything. Luli continued to cultivate. During this time, there were no demons or beasts nearby. Time passed by quickly. Patriarchshire didn't come back, while everyone was waiting anxiously. Dead. Everyone's hearts sank. He hadn't returned after a day and a half. Eldershire must have died in battle. Otherwise, he would have definitely returned. Let's go back. Ning Ao waved his hand. They all went back without hesitation except for Luli. They flew for a while and were surprised to see that Luli didn't move. Hu Qianjun waved his hand to stop them. He turned to Luli and asked, Chosen one, are you not coming with us? You go first. Luli waved his hand and said, I will wait for Patriarchshire. I will catch up with you later. Yuan Lingyun was disappointed. Luli didn't want to go with them. Was he afraid that he would be dragged down by them? Ning Ao and Tan Long had hidden killing intent in their eyes. Hu Qianjun didn't say much. He waved his hand and said, If so, let's go. Yuan Lingyun gave Luli a meaningful look and flew away with the others. Chili Pepper pouted and murmured, he is so arrogant. He really thinks he is the best in the world. Let's see how he dies. Tan Long, Hu Qianjun, and Ning Ao's eyes glowed when they heard Chili Pepper's words. If Luli died in there, then it would be great news for them. If the chosen one died, then wouldn't they have a chance to be promoted? Luli stood up leisurely as he watched the group of warriors disappear into the distance. The killing intent in Tan Long's and Ning Ao's eyes made him more determined to go alone. Before he came, Chief Patriarch had said that no one should die. He was afraid that if he went with the others, he wouldn't be able to stop himself from killing them when they tried to harm him. That would be troublesome. Going with a group of young masters and young ladies would not be of any help to him. Instead, they would drag him down. Luli would have to be on guard against their sneak attacks. Chapter 2263. Luli waited for them to leave for half a day before he left. He did not follow the route they took. Instead, he flew thousands of miles away from the Milky Way and headed toward the south. Evil beasts were mainly found in the Milky Way, but there were more in the wild. Luli flew for 2 hours before he ran into a group of fire fairies and dozens of pyro beasts. No matter how many fire fairies there were, they were no different from a swarm of flies to Luli. It would just take him some time. As long as the pyro beasts were not in large numbers, they would be fine. Luli's flying sword could kill the pyro beasts one by one. For those young masters and young ladies, without the protection of patriarchship, they would be treading on thin ice. But for Luli, this was not a problem. He often traveled in the wild and in dangerous places. For him, the Milky Way realm was not dangerous, unless he was unlucky enough to run into some ghost fire kings. Roar, roar. After flying for more than 8 hours, Luli finally encountered a situation that put him under pressure for the first time. Hundreds of fire beasts and fire ants rushed out from the red forest in front of him. Buzzing, Luli could not afford to be careless. He released Phantom King at once, and the latter dashed out in a blur. On the other side, Luli sent out Phantom Shadow to deal with the fire ants. Luli also sent out the Worm of the Void to devour the fire ants. Fire ants were strong in defense and speed. They relied on their venom to attack. The only weakness was that their souls were weak. Therefore, Phantom Shadow was the best choice. As he had expected, Phantom Shadow whooshed on and swept across a group of fire ants. In an instant, all the fire ants stopped moving. Their souls were devoured by Phantom Shadow. Luli was relieved to see this. He turned to the Worm of the Void. The Worm of the Void was fast as well. Unfortunately, the Worm of the Void did not evolve. It was just splitting up. Luli controlled the Worm of the Void to devour the pyro beasts, but the result was the same. Phantom King was unstoppable. Every time he dashed past a pyro beast, it would be torn apart. Luli wanted to attack, but he realized that Phantom King and Phantom Shadow were so strong that he didn't have to do anything. After the time for 2 incense sticks to burn, Phantom King and Phantom Shadow came back. The ground was covered with broken limbs and dead fire ants. Luli put away the Phantom King and Spectre and began to think. It looked like he had to think of some way to make the Phantom King and Phantom Shadow even more powerful. These two were his capable subordinates, and if they could continue to become more powerful, he would be able to put up a fight even if he encountered a powerful for-tribulation heavenly god. Moving on, Luli ran into many fire goblins, fire beasts, and fire ants along the way. For Luli, they were just a bit of trouble, not a threat. For days later, Luli found a place to take a rest. He dug a cave in a barren mountain, built some runes, and rested with his eyes closed. The night gradually deepened, and the wilderness was quiet. There were no insects, birds, or beasts in this place, only those demons and beasts that had been bred. Therefore, the surroundings were exceptionally quiet, and even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. At dawn, Luli suddenly opened his eyes. There was only coldness in his eyes. From a distance came a slight noise of fluctuation in space. It was soft, but Luli's senses were sharp. He immediately sensed it. Moreover, he was able to clearly determine that it was not a demon or monster that had come, but people, 3 people. Tan Long, Ning Ao, and Hu Qianjun. Luli didn't even have to check to know that there were 3 of them. They were all 4th Tribulation Heaven Immortals, and they were young. Luli put on a cold smile. He didn't want to make trouble for them, but they wanted to kill him? Only by killing the Son of God could they have a chance to ascend to the throne. Luli pretended to be asleep. He didn't use psychic power to check. Instead, he used the trace of Tao to sense. He knew the situation in an area with a radius of 30 miles like the back of his hand. He could clearly sense the killing intent in the eyes of the 3. He secretly took out a memory crystal, ready to record the fight. He would like to see what the old guys had to say when he went to the Hall of Patriarchs. The 3 of them approached Luli quietly and then spread out, forming a triangle. They looked at each other and took out their treasures almost at the same time. They aimed at the mountain Luli was on, ready to finish him in one move. Whoosh! Luli broke out from the mountain one breath earlier. As soon as he flew out, the mountain exploded. Lu Li was furious. He yelled, "Tanlong, Ning Ao, Hu Qianjun, what are you doing? How dare you to murder the son of God?" "Ha ha," Tanlong sneered and said, "A living son of God is a son of God, but a dead one is nothing. Lu Li, don't blame us for being cruel. You are the one who got what you shouldn't have. Go to hell." Whoosh! The three of them flew back with their treasures and then continued to attack Lu Li in three blurs. Ning Ao and Hu Qianjun said nothing. It was pointless to waste words. If they could not kill Lu Li, the three of them would be in big trouble. Buzzing, Lu Li released Phantom King and Phantom Shadow and sent them to Hu Qianjun and Ning Ao respectively. At the same time, he released many worms of the void. He didn't expect them to achieve anything. He just wanted to distract the three. Lu Li released his dragon wings, and his flying sword collided with Hu Qianjun's pagoda. Lu Li's fist glowed in golden light as he punched at Tanlong's chariot. Boom, boom, boom. With two muffled sounds, both the flying sword and the pagoda were smashed away. So were Lu Li and his chariot. The sky was filled with glaring light. Horrifying chi and energy broke through the sky. The violent impact flattened the mountains nearby and cracked open the ground. Ning Ao held the white bone rod in his hand and fought against Phantom King. Ning Ao was stronger than Zhang Yi. Even though Phantom King managed to scratch Ning Ao still managed to hit his shoulder. Clearly, Ning Ao's white bone rod was a treasure. Phantom King's shoulder was covered in blood. Lu Li was relieved to see that Ning Ao's back was covered in blood and his armor was broken. Phantom King was fast. Ning Ao could not kill him. Phantom King was not a big deal. He could be thrown into the mountain and he could recover. Lu Li turned to Hu Qianjun. Phantom Shadow had entered his body, but Hu Qianjun did not panic. That being said, after the flying sword flew away, Hu Qianjun turned pale. Phantom Shadow was attacking him in his soul. The flying sword was everywhere, and there were worms all over the sky. He was suffering. Lu Li put his mind at ease and focused on dealing with Tanlong. Of the three, Tanlong was the weakest. When the chariot crashed into him, Lu Li only felt some pain in his arm, but it was not fatal. Lu Li didn't fight Tanlong to the death. Instead, he wandered around and attacked Hu Qianjun with his flying sword. Every now and then, he would stab at Ning Ao. "Lu Li, don't run if you have balls. Are you a man or not?" Tanlong was not as fast as Lu Li, so he had to run behind Lu Li. He was furious, and he kept yelling. He knew very well that Hu Qianjun and Ning Ao could not hold on much longer. If the two were killed, Tanlong would die as well. "Tanlong, are you out of your mind?" Lu Li rolled his eyes and coldly said, "The three of you are ganging up on me. 3 against 1. And you want me to stand still? I don't know how Great Patriarch has such a stupid descendant. You are a disgrace to the Tan family. Also, how dare you 3 to murder the god's son? When I go back, I will demand an explanation from your family." Chapter 2264. Lu Li's words were filled with righteousness and vigor. His voice was as loud as thunder, making the three's eardrums hurt. The three turned ghastly pale. They were at a disadvantage. If they were killed by Lu Li, there would be nothing left to say. But if they were captured, they would be in big trouble when they got back to the Palace of Demons. The three tried their best to struggle. However, the more anxious they were, the easier it was for them to make mistakes. Once they were not calm enough, they would be vulnerable. Phantom King would not show mercy. One side was anxious while the other side was calm. Soon, Ning Ao was covered in wounds. Hu Qianjun was a disciple of Hu Yidao's family. Even though Hu Yidao was a patriarch of the Hall of Warfare, he didn't have endless resources. The enchanted soul in Hu Qianjun's soul was not of a high level. He could only stand the attacks of Phantom King. Hu Qianjun was suffering under the harassment of Lu Li's flying swords. He was injured in many places. He couldn't hold on much longer. At this rate, there would be many holes on his body. Tanlong was furious. He kept chasing after Luli, but Luli wouldn't fight him face to face. Every time Tan Long released his chariot, Luli would smash it away. Tan Long could not catch up with Luli, so he had to run around with him. After the time for half an incense stick to burn, Ning Ao cried out in pain. One of his hands was torn off by Phantom King. He cried out in pain. His body was covered in scratches. The excessive blood had slowed down his reaction. Oh no! Ning Ao looked gloomy. He was doomed this time. He might not die, but he would at least be badly injured by Lu Li. It all depended on whether Lu Li would leave him a way out. Soon, Hu Qianjun cried out as well. One of his legs was cut off. The flying sword circled around, and when it came back, Hu Qianjun's other leg was cut off as well. Although his leg was broken, it didn't have much of an impact on his combat power. The thing was, if Lu Li could cut off his legs, he could also cut off his hands. They had lost this fight. Tan Long was furious. Seeing how miserable Ning Ao and Hu Qianjun were, he seemed to have seen his end. He shouted, "Lu Li, kill us if you have the guts." "You think too much," Lu Li sneered and said. "Your lives mean nothing to me. If it were not for your families, I could kill you as easily as killing ants. Don't worry, I'll bring you back and let your elders teach you how to behave." Xiao! Lu Li's sword pierced through the sky and pierced into Ning Ao's pellet. Ning Ao cried out in pain and fell down. The Phantom King and Ghostly Shadow flew over and joined forces to attack. Tan Long had been chasing after Lu Li. Under the attacks of Phantom Master and Phantom Shadow, Tan Long suffered greatly. Looking at Hu Qianjun, Lu Li said, "Hu Qianjun, I have a good relationship with Patriarch Hu, so I will do you a favor. Don't move. I'm going to seal your divine elixir, or you'll end up like Ning Ao." Hu Qianjun's face was filled with bitterness. Seeing Lu Li coming, Hu Qianjun was struggling. The pagoda in his hand glowed and dimmed as if he was hesitating whether he should continue. "Don't embarrass yourself. Do you think your battle prowess is stronger than the 3 Rakshasa monsters?" Lu Li's voice came to Hu Qianjun's mind. "If you dare to do anything, I will destroy your pellet and cut off your hands." Lu Li came. Hu Qianjun had no choice but to put away the treasure and let Lu Li seal his divine elixir and soul. Hu Qianjun took out some pellets and swallowed them. His face was pale as he said with a bitter smile, "All right, God's son, you have won." Tan Long was in a miserable state. Under the joint attack of Phantom Shadow and Phantom King, Tan Long was soon covered in blood. His divine elixir was crushed by Phantom King. If it were not for the fact that Lu Li was controlling Phantom King, Tan Long would have been minced. Whoosh! Lu Li flew over, took out the wicked bead, and threw the 3 of them in. At the same time, he sent Blood Fairy and Phantom Shadow in to keep an eye on them. Blood Fairy would inform Lu Li at once if anything happened. "Stay inside obediently." Lu Li's cold voice was heard in the hall of the wicked bead. "If you do anything, you will die. I mean what I say." Whoosh! Having captured the 3, Lu Li flew on to the south. He had recorded what happened with the Crystal of Memory, so he was not afraid that Hall of Patriarchs would come after him. Instead, he asked Hall of Patriarchs to give him an explanation. Tan Long and Ning's Proud Spirit pellets were destroyed, which was not a big deal for the top families. Lu Li believed that Palace of Rakshasa had many such pellets to help them recover. Along the way, Lu Li would run into demons. He would only send out Phantom King and Phantom Shadow to attack when he could not stand it any longer. 2.5 days later, Lu Li stopped on a mountain. He was not under attack. There were people fighting ahead, and the fight was fierce. More than 30 young masters and young ladies were fighting hard. At the foot of the mountain, there were fire ants, fire beasts, and countless fire fairies. "So many have died?" Lu Li took a look. He was shocked. There were only 36 young masters and young ladies now. Originally, there were 47. Excluding Tan Long and the other 2, 9 were gone. Lu Li observed carefully. Of the 9 missing, 5 were young ladies and 4 were young masters. All of them were weak. Without Tan Long and the other 2, half of them would have died if they wanted to go back to the Milky Way City. Lu Li nodded after a few looks. "Tan Long, Ning Ao, and Hu Qianjun were the leaders. The three of them were also the strongest, and the treasures they had on them were also very powerful. Without them, the warriors felt like they had lost their leader. They had to fight on their own. If it were not for Yuan Lingyun and Mumu's strenuous efforts to hold on, it was estimated that a few more of them would have died by now. Never mind, it would have been fine if he hadn't run into them. But now that he had, Lu Li wouldn't leave them to die. The most important thing was that Tan Long and the other two were the most hostile to him. The others didn't like him, but they didn't want to kill him. Whoosh! Lu Li flew down from the mountain. Phantom King flew out like an aurora. Their ferocious chi and energy spread out, making the dozens of warriors feel like they had fallen into an ice cellar. It is Lu Li. Immortal Sun, save us. We are going to die. Thank you, Immortal Sun, for saving our lives. The warriors were surprised at first, and then they were overjoyed. Many were injured and some were in despair. If it were not for Lu Li, many would have lost their lives here. Immortal Sun is here? Yuan Lingyun's eyes flickered with fear. She knew very well that Tan Long, Ning Ao, and Hu Qianjun had gone missing not to have fun, but to assassinate Lu Li. Why did Lu Li come when Tan Long and Hu Qianjun didn't? Did Tan Long and the other two not find Lu Li, or were they killed by Lu Li? She had some understanding of Lu Li. He was a cruel and merciless man. Otherwise, how dare he take the immortal lady hostage at the Hell Island? How dare he kill several commanders and incapacitate Meng Li? Lu Li rushed down. Phantom King began to kill the pyrolite beasts, and Phantom Shadow killed the fire ants. Lu Li himself took out his flying sword to kill the pyrolite beasts. With the help of Lu Li, the situation was stabilized. Phantom King stopped most of the pyrolite beasts, and Phantom Shadow devoured the souls of the fire ants. Everywhere he went, there was nothing left. All hail, Immortal Sun! Chapter 2265. With Lu Li's arrival, the tables were turned. In the time for 2 incense sticks to burn, most of the fire beasts were killed, and so were the fire ants. The rest of the fire beasts were nothing to worry about. The rest of the warriors worked together to kill the fire fairies. Even though many of them were injured, it was not a problem. After the time for 2 incense sticks to burn, the fire fairies were all killed. Few. Many of them sat on the ground, not behaving like young masters. Many of them were injured. Some young ladies' robes were torn. They shyly went into their interspatial artifacts to clean up their wounds and put on new clothes. Lu Li didn't have any blood on him, and he didn't need to rest. He looked around and frowned. He wanted to go back to the city by himself. But it seemed that if he left, less than half of them could make it back to the Heaven River City. None of them could make it back if something bad happened to them. Lu Li was unwilling to help this group of people. His face showed that he was in a dilemma. Yuan Lingyun had been paying attention to him. She was a smart girl. She understood Lu Li's expression at once. She walked over, bowed, and said, "Thank you, Divine Sun, for saving our lives. We are grateful. Please, Divine Sun, be a good man and lead us back to the Heaven River City." Yuan Lingyun's words attracted many people's attention. They looked over and were alarmed to see Lu Li's emotionless face. Lu Li didn't seem to be willing to lead them back, but it was understandable. They had been treating Lu Li badly before. It was already precious that Lu Li was willing to help them. How could they expect him to escort them back? This was a little too much for him to handle. Seeing that Lu Li didn't say anything, Yuan Lingyun winked at the others. Several young ladies understood at once. They walked over to Lu Li. A young lady whose robe was stained with blood looked at Lu Li with a pitiful look and said, "Divine Sun, you are a generous man. Please save us. If you don't take us with you, we will all die." "Yes, Divine Sun, we were wrong in the past. We know we are wrong. You have to save us. Without you, we definitely won't be able to survive. Divine Sun, when we return this time, we will definitely report your contributions to the Hall of Elders. We will all support you in the future." Several young masters walked over and said to Lu Li in a solemn tone, They were all very humble, looking like a bunch of poor kids. Luli was still expressionless. These people were disciples of big families. They were sophisticated and good at acting. At this moment, he looked so pitiful. After saying all the nice things, he would probably turn around and curse in his heart after he was safe. Seeing that Luli still didn't say anything, Yuan Lingyun made up her mind. She bent her knees and was about to kneel down. Luli was so perceptive. He immediately grabbed Yuan Lingyun's shoulder and looked at her indifferently. "All right, there's no need to do this. I'll take you back." "Thank you, divine son." Yuan Lingyun's face revealed a joyful expression, and a few young ladies' faces flushed red. The young masters let out a long sigh of relief. Tam Long and the other two had disappeared for a few days, and it seemed likely that they would not be able to return. Yuan Lingyun and the others would not be able to make it back to Tiana City. "Recuperate and heal your wounds here. We will depart in half a day." Luli waved his hand. He flew to a nearby hill and sat down with his legs crossed to cultivate. The young masters and young ladies sprang into action. Luli's calmness and strength had given them a backbone. They could relax. They had plenty of elixirs with them. They found a place to sit and tend to their wounds. Yuan Lingyun asked two people to patrol nearby and then flew over to Luli. Yuan Lingyun was not injured and there was no blood on her. Luli smelled her fragrance when she got closer. He didn't open his eyes and continued to sit with his legs crossed. Yuan Lingyun stood next to Luli. She thought it was impolite to look down at Luli like this. She took out a cattail hassock and sat down. She looked at Luli from the side and asked, "Divine Son, have you seen Tan Long, Ning Ao, and Hu Qianjun?" "Yes," Luli answered casually. Yuan Lingyun's heart was weighed down. She asked with a changed expression, "Are they okay?" "They are okay." Luli opened his eyes. He took out a memory crystal and threw it over. Yuan Lingyun was taken aback. Then she poured in divine energy and began to check with psychic power. A moment later, she looked even worse. She took a deep breath, gazed into Luli's eyes, and said with sincerity, "The three of them have only themselves to blame. Master is right to choose you as the chosen one. You are much more powerful than us. We are like flowers in a greenhouse. We cannot withstand the storm. You are the real, powerful warrior. Well, from now on, I will give up on the idea of being a divine lady and focus on cultivation. I will fight for the position of a patriarch." Luli looked at Yuan Lingyun with surprise. He stared into her eyes for a while, but he still couldn't tell if she was sincere or not. This girl had a high EQ, and she was good at pretending. Who could tell if she was telling the truth or not? Luli thought about it and said, "You should fight for what you should. I will not be the divine son for long. The other three will lose their reputations at the palace of Rakshasa after this. Once I abdicate, the position of divine lady will be yours. You must work hard. Your realm is high and your soul attainments are strong. But you need to improve your abilities in actual fights. Forget that you are a goddess that everyone admires. Think of yourself as a warrior. Practice and you will achieve more in the future." Luli's words came from the bottom of his heart. His words were sincere, and Yuan Lingyun could feel his sincerity. She didn't understand why Luli said he would not be able to hold the position for long. Wasn't the divine son good? It was a position that many people yearned for. She looked up at Luli, his dark and glowing eyes. Her heart trembled. Everything Luli said was true. Somehow, she could tell, one day, Luli would go to a faraway place. He didn't have a sense of belonging here. Just like before, he didn't fit in with the others. He didn't belong here, and he didn't like it. He had no other choice but to stay here. Her eyes suddenly turned as if she had thought of something. She suddenly sent a voice transmission and asked, "Divine Son, have you been implanted with the mysterious heaven talisman?" Luli said nothing. He just glanced at Yuan Lingyun. Yuan Lingyun understood everything as soon as they made eye contact. She remembered what she found out about Luli. Luli betrayed the Palace of Hell, took Su Yueqin and Meng Li hostage, was hunted down, and was attacked by 4 forces at the Palace of Hell. When he was at the brink of despair, Luo Fian showed up and brought him back to the Palace of Rakshasa. No wonder he doesn't want to be the divine son. He was forced. Yuan Lingyun's heart was touched. Luli had always been out of place, like a lone wolf, and this was the reason. Her eyes grew softer. After the time for one incense stick to burn, she said, "Divine Son, in the future, if you need anything, just tell me. I will do my best." Yuan Lingyun had thought it through. She had to find a way to help Luli leave. Only when Luli left could she really have the chance to become a divine lady. Chapter 2266. For the rest of the time, they followed Luli to the Milky Way city. With Luli leading the way, they ran into many monsters along the way. But every time, Luli would take the brunt of most of the pressure, which made the others feel more relaxed. In addition, Luli's flying sword would come and save their lives at critical moments. Therefore, nobody died during the 10 days. This time, many young masters and young ladies were convinced. They were not so against Luli anymore. They looked at Luli with awe. Luli was still as cold as before. He hardly talked to anyone. Every time he rested, he would sit in a nearby hill with his legs crossed, out of place. The only one that could talk to Luli was Yuan Lingyun. At first, many young masters were jealous, but they were relieved to see that Luli was cold to Yuan Lingyun as well. It seemed that Luli didn't have any feelings for Yuan Lingyun, or he was born to be cold-blooded and would not fall in love with anyone. Yuan Lingyun was the only one who knew that Luli was not cold-blooded. Otherwise, he wouldn't have brought them back and saved their lives again and again at the critical moment. Luli was more lonely than cold-blooded. He didn't plan to integrate himself into the palace of Rakshasa. He had always regarded himself as an outsider. Therefore, he had frozen his heart. It was night again. After a fierce fight, Luli ordered them to rest. He patrolled around and went to a nearby hill by himself. This time, he didn't sit with his legs crossed to cultivate. Instead, he drank from a jug of wine. Whoosh! A beautiful figure flew over. Under the white moonlight, she looked like a fairy flying from the heavens. A delicate fragrance wafted over, causing the night to become even more alluring. Luli threw Yuan Lingyun a casual glance. His expression didn't change. He had gotten used to this girl coming over to chat with him every now and then. "You were drinking by yourself?" Yuan Lingyun was surprised. She took out the jug of wine from her interspatial ring, raised it, and said with a smile, "I will drink with you." Luli looked at Yuan Lingyun again and continued to drink by himself. Standing on the hill, he gazed into the distance. His dark eyes were filled with melancholy. "Is there anything that makes you unhappy?" After drinking a few mouthfuls of wine, Yuan Lingyun blushed and said with a smile, "Tell me. Let me be happy." Luli didn't smile at Yuan Lingyun's cold joke. After a while, he sighed and said, "I miss home." "Home?" Yuan Lingyun's complexion turned gloomy. She also had a family, but it was not a warm one. Apart from her mother, the rest of the people were not her real family. She pursed her lips into a smile, tilted her head, and asked, "Divine Son, where is your hometown? Is it far from here?" "In a realm of the second heaven." Luli didn't hide anything and explained, "If I go back from here, it won't take too long. But I don't think I can go back in a short time. Maybe I have to stay in the third heaven for a long time." Second heaven? Yuan Lingyun was surprised. She didn't expect that Luli had ascended from the lower realms. She was born in the third heaven and was unfamiliar with the second heaven. She didn't ask more about the second heaven in case Luli would be sadder. She thought about it for the time for one incense stick to burn. Suddenly, she moved her lips and sent a message to Luli. "Actually, the mysterious heaven talisman can be solved. There are 2 people at the palace of Rakshasa who can, but they will not do it with you. Also, if you can ask someone from a family to help, it will be easier." Luli's eyes glowed like the 2 brightest stars in the sky. He looked at Yuan Lingyun and asked, "Tell me more." Seeing Luli's expressions, Yuan Lingyun was sure of one thing. Luli really didn't want to stay at the Rakshasa palace. He wanted to leave at all times. He had no attachment to the position of divine son. There are two great patriarchs who can solve the mystery heaven talisman. But of course, they won't help you. Otherwise, the master will be furious. Yuan Lingyun explained. After a pause, she continued, there is a family at the Rakshasa Sea that is good at poisons and insects. According to the information I got, they should have many people who can solve the mystery heaven talisman. This family is the Mu family, one of the four major families. If Divine Son can ask someone from the Mu family for help, I don't think it will be difficult. Mu family? Lu Li's eyes glowed. He felt bitter. He couldn't even leave the Rakshasa island. How could he ask for help from the Mu family? What was more, the Mu family and the Rakshasa palace were enemies. Would they help him? Why would they help him? More importantly, the mystery heaven talisman was in his soul. If the Mu family played some tricks, he would die without a burial place. Divine Son, don't worry. Yuan Lingyun could tell what Lu Li was thinking. She added, I have some attainments in souls. When I go back, I will study the mystery heaven talisman. It will be better if I can solve it. Good. Lu Li nodded and said, Lingyun, work hard. On the day I leave, the position of goddess will be vacant. Actually, I have thought it through. Yuan Lingyun smiled bitterly and said, the position of goddess is just a matter of vanity. Master is in the prime of his life. He can live for more than 100,000 years. Even if he becomes a goddess, it will be extremely difficult for him to become a master. As long as you have the power, even if you are just an ordinary person without any identity, who can belittle you? If I am more powerful than Master, it will be easy for me to create my own Rakshasa palace. You have finally understood. Lu Li looked at Yuan Lingyun with gratification. This girl was smart, and she had grown up fast. Her fighting abilities might not have improved by much this time, but her mind had been transformed. Looking into Lu Li's eyes, Yuan Lingyun somehow felt shy. Lu Li sensed that she was about the same age as Lu Li. But in front of Lu Li, she felt like a child. Go back and have a good rest. Tomorrow, we may have another tough fight. Lu Li waved his hand, picked up his goblet, and continued to drink. He looked into the distance and paid no more attention to Yuan Lingyun. Yuan Lingyun nodded. She kicked back with one leg and flew back. In midair, she suddenly looked back at Lu Li. She saw the proud and aloof man on the hill. Mixed feelings rose in her eyes. This man was different from the one she knew before. She could not tell what was different, but she just felt he was different. It seemed that the more she spent time with him, the more mysterious he seemed. I can't think about it anymore. Yuan Lingyun forced herself to look away. She had high EQ. She knew that when a person was curious about the opposite sex and admired them, it was the beginning of falling. If Lu Li was willing to stay at the Rakshasa palace, then she wouldn't mind being captured by him. But Lu Li was destined to leave sooner or later. Such being the case, she shouldn't get involved. Otherwise, what awaited her would be a lifetime of hurt, unless she was willing to go far away with Lu Li. But she still had her mother to take care of. She could not leave the Rakshasa palace. Tears dries the heart of the king of hell. Her hair is soft. Lu Li glanced at Yuan Lingyun, who had turned into a black spot from the corner of his eyes. He sighed. He had to admit that Yuan Lingyun was a very attractive girl, but he had to freeze his heart. Chapter 2267. Boom, boom, boom. 8 days later, above the red wasteland, a fiery cloud covered half of the sky. Giant beasts roared as they galloped. Groups of fire ants crawled on the ground. The entire wasteland was a paradise for monsters. A group of young men and women were surrounded by the beasts, but they didn't panic. Instead, they formed a circle and cooperated with each other. Outside the group was a beast that was standing upright. It had black wings and was as fast as a ghost. It had sharp claws. Every time it waved its claws, a fire beast would be torn apart. There was also a ghostly figure that blew past like a chilly wind. Wherever it blew past, groups of fire ants would stop moving as their souls were devoured. Lu Li realized that the ghostly shadow could become stronger by devouring the souls of beasts. The growth was slow, but it had been gradual. Lu Li was excited by this. Every time there were fire ants, he would let the ghostly shadow out at once and let it devour them to its heart's content. Even though there were many beasts, under the organized efforts of the team, there were only dead bodies left. The team had grown through the battles. Of course, this had something to do with Lu Li, the leader. Yuan Lingyun had to admire him for this. In the past, she was the leader, but under her leadership, there would be deaths every time. What was more, the team couldn't even exert 60 or 70% of their abilities. Lu Li didn't give many orders. He stood in the field by himself, controlling his flying sword. He seemed to be the most relaxed one, but every order he gave would make the team more cooperative. Every time he made a move, he could save someone from danger. They didn't have to think too much or worry about anything. They just had to follow Lu Li's orders and attack. After so many battles, everyone felt their abilities had been improved. Before, they could only exert 60 or 70% of their abilities. Now, they could exert 120%, which was beyond their normal level. Tan Long, Ning Ao, and Hu Qianjun didn't catch up. There was no news of Patriarchshire either. Everyone thought they were dead. The three top young masters were dead. Yuan Lingyun was impressed by Lu Li. Naturally, the others didn't want to compete with Lu Li. They all tacitly accepted him as the chosen one. The young ladies were resistant and disgusted from the beginning. Gradually, they began to accept Lu Li. During this time, they looked at Lu Li differently. Lu Li was the same as before. He was cold and didn't talk much. Previously, everyone thought that Lu Li was a loner and pretentious person. Now, however, they felt that he was mysterious, cool, and unfathomable. Lu Li had changed from a country bumpkin to an aloof and peerless master. Little Chili Pepper had changed the most. She was the kind of person who did not show her emotions on her face and was straightforward. Love was love, and hate was hate. There was no need for too much scheming. At first, Yuan Lingyun had changed her attitude towards Lu Li. She was a bit angry and confused. During this time, Yuan Lingyun changed her attitude and smiled at Lu Li every day. Even though Lu Li didn't pay much attention to her, she still followed behind Lu Li. She looked like a pug that made Yuan Lingyun's balls hurt, if she had balls. Why are you following me? After the battle, Lu Li flew up to clear the remaining monsters nearby. He saw Chili Pepper following him. He coldly glanced over and said, "Aren't you going to help your sister treat her injuries?" "I won't die, I won't die." Little Chili Pepper waved her hand dismissively and smiled sweetly. "I'm following you because I'm afraid that you're alone and weak. So I'm here to help." "That's good." Lu Li stopped, crossed his arms, and said, "Then I won't do anything. You can have the rest of the burning fire beasts." "Ha ha." Little Chili Pepper stuck out her tongue and mischievously said, "Divine Son, you are a man who will accomplish great things. How can you argue with a little girl like me? Go, go. I will watch and learn from you." Lu Li sighed helplessly. He flew around and killed the rest of the fire beasts after he circled around the area. Little Chili Pepper followed him like a shadow. When they got back to the camp, she lowered her head shyly when she saw Yuan Lingyun's faint smile. Phew, phew. After Lu Li came back, many people were relieved and began to treat their injuries with peace of mind. They were not far away from the Milky Way city. They would be able to go back in 2 or 3 days. For them, this trip was more like a trip to hell. They had participated in many trials before, but none of them were as dangerous as this one. The most important thing was that Patriarchshire's death had deprived them of their greatest support. After some rest, they moved on. This time, everyone was in high spirits. They sped up as well. They were about to arrive at the Milky Way city. Their trip to hell had come to an end. The closer they were to the city, the fewer the beasts. They had been on the road for more than a day and only ran into some sporadic beasts. They were all smiling, talking, and laughing like a group of kids coming home from spring outing. Oh no! After traveling for another 4 hours, a white cloud floated over from the distant heavenly river. Yuan Lingyun, who had the strongest soul, was the first to react. Her pretty face turned pale as she exclaimed, "Ghost Fire Kings, 2 of them." "Ah!" Little Chili Pepper and Lu Qianqian screamed. The others' expressions changed. One king of Ghost Fire was enough to kill Patriarchshire. Now there were two. How could they survive? Lu Qianqian dashed to Lu Li's back and grabbed his arm. She was trembling in fear. The others looked at Lu Li with expectation. They all hoped that he would give an order, for them to retreat first, and that he would deal with the king of Ghostfire alone. Lu Li was the only one who could fight against the king of Ghostfire. If Lu Li didn't cover up the rear, none of them would be able to escape. It was selfish, but everyone had the same thought in the face of life and death. Lu Li didn't move. He didn't give any orders, which made everyone's faces turn gloomy. Was Lu Li going to drag them to hell with him? At this moment, even Yuan Lingyun couldn't help but overthink. Ha! Lu Li chuckled. He waved his hand and said, "Why are you so scared? It is just two king of Ghostfire. Let's wait and see." See? Everyone was shocked. Yuan Lingyun looked at Lu Li. He was looking to the northwest. She seemed to be thinking about something. Turning his gaze over, Zhang Xian saw two figures dashing over like frenzied dragons. One of them was powerful. It was a patriarch of the palace of Rakshasa. It is Grandpa Feng and Grandpa Mu. Little Chili Pepper's cheeks turned rosy again. She shouted in joy. The others were overjoyed as well. Patriarch Feng was very powerful, and he was the vice patriarch of the Hall of Warfare. Now that he was here, they would be safe. Yuan Lingyun looked into the distance. She was sure that Patriarch Feng and Patriarch Mu could deal with the king of Ghostfire. She looked away and asked Lu Li in surprise, "How do you know that Patriarch Feng is nearby?" "I guessed it." Lu Li smiled lightly and said, "If Patriarch Sure died, the Hall of Patriarchs will know, and they will send powerful patriarchs to rescue him. If Patriarch Sure is still alive, then he must be hiding nearby to protect us. Two patriarchs are here. I think Patriarch Sure is in grave danger." Yuan Lingyun nodded, agreeing with Lu Li's speculation. She didn't know that Lu Li had the trace of Dao, and his senses were very sensitive. Chapter 2268. What are you waiting for? Let's go to the Milky Way City. A shout came from Patriarch Feng's order. Lu Li could not have asked for more. He immediately brought a group of people and flew towards the Milky Way City. Granted, there were two Lord of Ghostfire, but since Patriarch Feng was the Vice Patriarch of the Hall of Warfare, he should be able to deal with them. Lu Li and the others left quickly. They didn't run into any large-scale beasts along the way. They flew at the top of their speed and arrived at the Milky Way City in one day. Whoosh! As soon as they entered the city, they heard some noises behind them. Patriarch Feng and Patriarch Feng had just arrived at the city. Patriarch Feng used psychic power to check Lu Li at once and said, "Divine Son, I want to talk to you in private." Lu Li understood right away. He nodded. Another patriarch came and told everyone to go back to rest. Lu Li followed the two patriarchs to a castle. Yuan Lingyun looked at Lu Li, who waved his hand quietly. Yuan Lingyun had to leave. Lu Li followed her into the castle. Patriarch Feng came straight to the point. "Where are they?" Lu Li bowed and said, "They are fine. They are fine. They will recover after some rest. Let them out first." Patriarch Feng waved his hand. His tone was firm, not allowing Lu Li to say no. Lu Li did not take out the wicked bead. Instead, he asked calmly, "Patriarch Feng, what should we do after we let them out?" A glint of coldness rose in Patriarch Mu's eyes, as if he was blaming Lu Li for his lack of sense. Patriarch Mu tried to smooth things over. "This time, the three of them did something wrong, and you have taught them a lesson. Don't make a big deal out of this. Otherwise, the two great patriarchs and patriarch who will be disgraced." "What do you mean by disgraced?" Lu Li didn't deny. "Master appointed me as the Divine Son in person. Master will be disgraced when the three of them try to kill me. If it were not for the fact that I have ways to protect myself, I would be a dead body by now. Can you keep a secret and not make a big deal out of it? You are fine, aren't you?" Elder Mu and Elder Feng's expressions were very ugly. They said angrily, "Divine Son, it is very normal for young people to fight. Always leave a way out. There's no need to make things so ugly. You have to look at the big picture. It was true that Lu Li was appointed by the palace master in person, but ever since Luo Fian came back, she never summoned Lu Li even once, nor did she ask anything about Lu Li. Therefore, in the minds of many patriarchs, Lu Li was just a tool that Luo Fian used to beat down the great patriarchs and the powerful patriarchs. Luo Fian did not care about Lu Li's life or death. On the other hand, Tan Longning, Ao Hu Yi Dao, and the others were different. These people were the future hope of their clans. They would definitely slowly enter the upper echelons of Luosha Palace in the future. Therefore, this matter had to be handled in a low-key manner. Otherwise, their reputation would be tarnished, and it would greatly affect their future development. Moreover, it would also affect their state of mind, which in turn would affect their cultivation. Hold back. Lu Li put on a mocking smile. He shook his head and said, Patriarch Mu, your point of view really makes me speechless. When the three of you tried to kill me, did you ever think about leaving me a way out? The fact that I didn't kill the three of them is already holding back. You may not know what kind of person I, Lu Li, am. Back at the Palace of Hell, when Su Yueqin and the Meng family dared to force me, I had the guts to kill them. How dare you? Patriarch Feng was enraged. Did Lu Li really think he was the chosen one? A chosen one without any background dared to be so arrogant to them. Patriarch Feng felt ashamed. I've always been bold, Lu Li said with a cold smile, emotionless. Patriarch Feng, if you doubt my determination, you could try. Let's see if I have the guts to kill the three of them. Patriarch Feng's horrifying qi and energy spread out at once. He was like an enraged lion. The entire Milky Way city felt the temperature drop at this moment. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Many people were alarmed. Yuan Lingyun and Lu Qianqian flew out from a castle at once. They flew over and checked with psychic power. Get out. Seeing that Lu Qianqian and Yuan Lingyun were coming in, Patriarch Feng shouted in rage. Lu Qianqian shrank back, but Yuan Lingyun grabbed her hand. They stood outside the castle. Even though they didn't come in, their psychic power was locked on Lu Li. Lu Li smiled and said, Patriarch Feng, don't be angry. I will let them go, but we must go back to the Hall of Patriarchs. I need an explanation from the Hall of Patriarchs, or else I will report this to our master. Patriarch Feng and Patriarch Mu's expressions were terrible. Patriarch Mu said, Are you sure you want to make a big deal out of this? Are you sure you don't want to think about the future? What good will it do you to offend the lords? Lu Li remained resolute. He said calmly, First of all, it is not that I want to offend them. It is their family that tried to kill me first. I am just an average person. I don't care who dares to kill me. Not to mention that I am the son of God. I will kill them first. Second of all, if I swallow my anger this time, what future do I have? From now on, everyone can surround me and kill me. Sometimes, I don't need to do things for the benefit, and I don't care about the harm. If I can't vent my anger, I will not be happy. I might as well die. Lu Li's words were fierce. He left no room for negotiation. He confronted them head-on and refused to yield. Lu Qianqian and Yuan Lingyun had been paying attention to what was going on inside. Their eyes glowed when they heard Lu Li's words. They had been in contact with people like Ning Ao, Hu Qianjun, Zhang Yi, and Tan Long. Disciples of noble families were usually more tactful. Ning Ao might seem tough, but he would yield at critical moments. Lu Li had no background at the Palace of Devils. He was being pressured by two patriarchs, but he refused to yield. His unyielding character moved the two patriarchs. They remembered how Lu Li killed his way out of the Valley of Ghosts to the Hell Island, took Meng Li and Su Yueqin hostage, fled to the Devil's Sea, and was hunted by several forces. From this, they could tell his character. He would rather die than be humiliated. Good. Patriarch Feng suddenly stood up and strode out. At the door, he looked back at Lu Li and said, If you want to make a scene, then go ahead. I want to see how you're going to deal with it. Sins committed by God can be forgiven, but sins committed by oneself cannot be forgiven. Elder Mu also left with these words and left with Elder Feng angrily. They stepped into the teleportation formation and left. As soon as they left, Yuan Lingyun and Lu Qianqian came in. Their eyes were filled with worry. Immortal son, Lu Qianqian pouted and said, I don't think so. I will go and beg Grandpa and ask him to give you some compensation. Ha ha. Lu Li smiled lightly, waved his hand and said, You don't have to worry about this. I have my own plan, but I need you to do me a favor. Go back with me and we will go to the Hall of Patriarchs. You just have to walk to the outside of the Hall of Patriarchs. As for the rest, you can just enjoy the show. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.